Hello and welcome to the Megacast. It is Doing More with Less Day on the Megacast, where we'll be highlighting technologies that help boost IT efficiency. And this could not be more timely. With more and more of us working from home and with so much to do, we as IT professionals need greater efficiency, and so does our IT organization. On today's event, you'll hear from experts at DataCore, Rapid7, Solarwinds, Zerto, Scale Computing, and Nutanix. Each one of today's expert speakers will be talking about ways that their solution can help you to boost IT efficiency. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Now, before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping that you first need to know about. We have some awesome prizes to give away on today's event. After all, this is a Megacast, and we always have mega prizes. I'll talk about those prizes as well as the requirements to be eligible for the drawings in just a moment. We also want this to be a social event. I'll be tweeting about the event, and I hope that you will too. In fact, you can tweet directly from your console using the Twitter icon at the bottom of your screen. And today's hashtag, which is ATM Megacast, will be automatically appended. We also have some questions for you throughout the event via our poll questions, and we appreciate you answering those in advance. But we also want this to be an educational event for you. That's why we at Actual Tech Media created the Megacast and EcoCast event series to help educate IT professionals such as yourselves about the latest and greatest in enterprise technology. And because of that, we want you to use that questions tab or the questions box that's there in your audience console. Go ahead and just click on that questions tab now. It's to the left of the slides window, and right next to the word handouts, you'll find the word questions. If you click on that, that's where you can pose your questions about today's presentations and IT efficiency in general. Now, on that handouts tab, we also have a number of resources and links from today's presenters, so make sure that you check those out. Download the resources, click on the PDFs, they'll open up new windows in your web browser, and check those out after the event. Now, I said we have prizes, and we sure do. We have 7 Oculus Rift Quest VR gaming headsets. I guess these could help with your IT efficiency. I'm not quite sure about that. There's got to be some way they can. If they don't help with IT efficiency, I'm sure they can help to relieve some stress. We'll be giving out these gaming headsets as well as an Amazon $500 gift card after every presentation on the event today. So make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you stay on the edge of your seat and listen for those prize drawings. You must be live on the event to be eligible for the drawings. If you're watching this event on demand, I'm sorry, the drawings have already occurred. Full price terms and conditions can be found at events.actualtechmedia.com, or you can actually just go to the handouts tab right there, and the bottom link will take you to the prize terms and conditions. All prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. If you are a prize winner, we'll reach out to you after the event via email to deliver your prize. Now, through the Megacast and EcoCast event series, we've given out thousands of dollars to charity, and it's all thanks to generous attendees who win prizes and say, you know what, I have enough stuff already. I would like to help someone less fortunate than me. Through the Gorilla Guide Book Club, we have partnered with the Dan Fossey Gorilla Fund and the One Tree Planted charity as our preferred charities for the Megacast event series. To find out more about the Gorilla Guide Book Club, where you can download tons of free enterprise technology books, visit gorilla.guide. Now, the hashtag for today's event, as I said, is ATM Megacast, and it will be automatically appended if you use the Twitter icon on the bottom of your console. Today's event is brought to you by Actual Tech Media. You can follow Actual Tech Media on Twitter, and feel free to follow me as well, where I am David M. Davis. We welcome you subscribing to the Actual Tech Media YouTube, Facebook, and 10 on Tech podcast. You can find links to those on the top right hand of your audience console. Look for the YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook icons there. And also don't forget to subscribe to our LinkedIn channel. That's where we post our latest and greatest content as it relates to enterprise technology. And with that, I'm excited to kick off today's IT Efficiency Megacast with our keynote presentation. I'm excited to be joined by Mr. Bill Clayman. He is a well-known author, blogger, keynote presenter, and he's also the Executive Vice President of Digital at Switch. Bill, thanks for being on the event today.
You know what? It is a pleasure to be on the event today. And you know what, David? We are nice and safe because you and I are doing this digitally. So we can do like a digital high five and everything's cool there.
That's right. That's right.
There we
So,
go. You know what it is? It's the Vulcan hello now. That's like the most sanitary way of saying hi.
I saw that. Live long.
There we go. I like it.
And be efficient. So we're talking all about efficiency on today's event, using technology for greater efficiency. I know that's something that you have spoken a lot about at conferences and in your keynote presentations. And so, I mean, first question I want to kick off with is, I mean, you talk a lot about AR and VR technologies. Do you think that can really help boost IT efficiency?
You know, it's amazing that that's the first question you ask, right? People are expecting, oh, Bill can talk about DSIM or Bill can talk about virtualization management technology. I'm like, no, I'm going to talk about stuff that you can put on your head. I'm going to keep this brief. I absolutely believe that augmented reality and even virtual reality systems are going to become a bigger part of how we manage IT systems. And if anything, even a data center. I've physically already tried out different technologies, specifically around augmented reality, where you can put on this headset, look at a data center rack and see what's inside of it, how it's networked, how power is delivered, where there's 1, 2, 4, 6 units inside of the thing, how you can maneuver them. And then using a joystick, you can actually open the cage, zoom right into it, turn it around and look in the back. So imagine being able to sit at a office and design a data center or a row of racks half a world away and literally be able to see what's going on in that kind of ecosystem. Now, for those of you who are a little bit of a detractor, yes, there's a lot of non-standardized parts, and yes, there are thousands and thousands of things that can go into a rack. But from what I saw, an actually moderately viable product, this stuff is pretty cool because you're actually being able to augment what you're seeing in real life with the potential of architecture, building out scalability, and absolutely improving efficiency as well. So I suggest that you guys take a look at some of the AR, VR technologies out there, that are starting to sort of impact the way we manage things. Might not be crazy out there yet, but it's definitely something I think that's going to be happening in the near future.
Very cool. Very cutting edge stuff. I mean, that was a keynote at VMworld. I remember one year they used augmented reality to vMotion, a virtual machine. So cool stuff. So, I mean, you talk all about the cloud. You spend a lot of time with cloud. What are some tools that you feel like can help make cloud easier?
I spoke recently before everything got canceled. I spoke recently at a fairly large event. It was actually Oracle Cloud Day out in Toronto. And it was a room of about 1,000 people. And the question was asked, how many people in this room have 2 or more cloud services? I'm not talking like major public cloud providers that they manage. Every hand went up. Okay. How about 3 or more? Like more than 80% of the room, like 4, 5 cloud services. People had their hands up. All right. So time out, everybody. How do you effectively manage? Do you have like 6 or 7 different cloud portals that you have to get into every single day? There's tools out there, OpenStack, OpenShift, Eucalyptus. There's other kinds of platforms that allow you to manage what we're going to call the new normal, that is multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. I think there's trends right now. There's real trends, and actually the latest AppCom State of the Data Center report actually shows a growing trend of people pulling back some of their infrastructure from public cloud into edge, co-locations, remote data centers to get that rural intimacy with customers. But in that sense, you're still managing cloud services. So my big recommendation is actually leverage systems with good APIs, good open APIs that can integrate with things like OpenStack or OpenShift that give you this opportunity to manage multiple cloud services under one management layer. Then you can do things like automation, orchestration. You can even do things like anomalous behavior detection. So it tells you a part of your cloud is not behaving properly. You don't want to lose control of your cloud resources. And a great way to do that is to try and find a platform that unifies all of that. If you're listening to this, you're probably nodding along that you have at least 2 or 3 cloud services you're managing. So think about it. How are you doing this today? Are you literally doing this manually, each one? And think about ways you can actually unify these services together. That's the big one. And I do promise that multi and hybrid cloud are quickly becoming the new normal. So figure out a way not to have 8 different management portals and just unify it under one if you can.
Yeah, you make a great point. I mean, even just as an individual, you think about all the different cloud services that you put data in. There's no single place to go and see everything that you have and where it is and how to connect to it and what the status is. I mean, that's at the kind of personal level, and then corporations have that, times 1,000. So I agree. It's a great struggle. Any tool we can do or find to help us make that easier would be great. Another question, because I know we're running short on time here. We know that slow is the new down, and in our world of constant connectivity, we just expect to be always connected. So any advice on how to ensure performance for applications, servers, even remote users, just beyond some of the traditional things that are deployed out there?
As much as we're hearing this cool word about edge computing, and I hope half the people didn't just turn off the computer because they're sick of that word, edge computing is a real technology, but we're not seeing wide adoption of it yet. If you're an organization and you don't know what it is, or you're curious about edge, or you're curious about what these systems can do for you, start learning about it. Whether it's an edge service or actually building out a small micro data center or an edge data center for yourself to support latency sensitive applications. WAN optimization is amazing. Please don't think that, I've got a firewall, I'm, doing some VLANing, some segmenting to make sure that traffic doesn't get saturated in a network. That's not WAN op, that's you just controlling your network. WAN optimization allows you to actually parse out pieces of your network to increase the capability of delivery of really core and critical resources, applications, desktops, et cetera. A part of that is also things like WAN acceleration, and another big one certainly is SD-WAN. SD-WAN is not WAN op. I just want to make sure that you're clear on that. They're two different technologies, but what's really amazing about SD-WAN is that you can control the different connections that you have coming into your environment as well as the edge. So you're not stuck with MPLS contracts, you're not stuck with like single carriers that you can't manage, but you can absolutely work with the kind of bandwidth coming in. Slow is the new down. You can't experience these kinds of outages. I know that Google and Amazon, when they said that they experienced milliseconds of latency, that'll cost them $1 billion or more at the end of the year as far as sales are concerned. When Disney Plus first launched, they had problems the first week, and Disney Plus kind of became a Disney minus. See what I did there? That was a bad joke. I won't quit my day job. But to that extent, making sure you have systems that are capable of handling this amount of users. So ask your people, have systems that are capable of seeing what the end user experience is like, so you can actually make better decisions around their experience and what they're downloading and what they're seeing. Don't guess. Actually work with your users and seeing what their experience is like across a variety of applications, and then deploy technologies that focus on ways to make them more efficient and give them the platform to do wonderful things with the tools that they have. So WAN op, SD-WAN, WAN acceleration, and look at specific applications and services that you can make perform faster over the WAN.
Great advice. Yeah, I mean, no user likes to call the support desk and say something's running slow and get the answer, well, looks fine to me. I don't know. The support group, the IT organization, they need tools, they need metrics, they need that visibility. So great point. Last question here on efficiency, and that is, I mean, kind of at a broader, higher level outside of kind of cutting edge technologies, any advice on just helping IT professionals to be more efficient?
Don't get overwhelmed. I think IT has a propensity to become complex and fragmented really, really quickly because of just how much there is out there. Converged systems, virtualization, you're creating VMware with cloud resources, and then cloud resource coming back on-prem. There's just so much stuff out there. Now with the world of DevOps being more tightly integrated with IT and people actually using these applications, it can get even more confusing. Work with your team, have good documentation, and that's really, really important. And an active documentation as well, where you can actually see what's being changed, what modifications are happening, and then have good old-fashioned communication with your teams between business, IT, development, application support, because when you have a disjointed technology organization, that's when problems start to occur. My biggest advice around efficiency is simply communicate. Communicate with your teams, your users, understand what your experience is like, and make sure that you're aligned with the business. But again, don't let anything get lost in the cog. Document, and check this kind of stuff out, and then talk to your teams to make sure that you're all aligned. Best way to reduce human error is to have good communication, and then also use things like automation.
Excellent advice. I'm glad you didn't say one word, Kubernetes. It would fix everything. Uh, real world advice for IT professionals. Thank you, Bill. So, I mean, before we go, what's new at Switch? What's going on?
Oh my goodness. If you haven't had a chance to check out what we are doing with things like smart cities and the edge, by all means, please take a look. We've signed some really cool new agreements with big organizations that I can't name on this podcast, but you're going to see them in a press release soon enough, where we are lighting up pieces of this country that were once dark, bringing critical services, life-saving services to parts of this country, again, that never saw these kinds of solutions. So what's really amazing at Switch is our ability to build a foundation for a connected tomorrow across the entire world and certainly across the entire country. It's an exciting time for Switch because we're quickly blurring the line between what a cloud, what a private ecosystem is, what a co-location is, because of advanced telecommunication services controlling of the edge and making things way faster, like that whole slows you down concept. We throw it out the window by the kinds of things that we deploy. Keep an eye on Switch. I know things are turbulent out there, but we are riding a really fun and exciting wave.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the event today, Bill.
Thank you, David, and thank you, everyone, for listening. You stay safe out there.
Excellent interview there with Bill. Thank you so much, Bill. It's always great to have Bill Clayman on the event. You can find Bill speaking at conferences and on virtual events around the world, and you can follow Bill on Twitter, where he is QuadStack. And now I've got a poll question for you.
All right, you should see a poll question on your screen that says, what's your time frame for updating existing or adding new technology solutions in your IT organization? If you're on the event today, you're interested in greater IT efficiency. You might be looking for some specific solutions to solve your very specific challenges in your IT organization. So that's what the question is about. What's your time frame? So I'll leave that up for a moment, let everyone to answer it. You should see that question again there in your slides window. And I appreciate everyone answering that one. We will be introducing our first presenter here in just a moment as soon as we finish answering this question. All right, lots of good responses coming in. Sean said he had some trouble answering that one. I would recommend refreshing your browser. Chrome is the recommended browser, and a private browsing or incognito browsing session just might do the trick if you're having any issues. All right, excellent feedback. Thank you, everyone who responded to that poll. And with that, I'm excited to introduce the first presenter on today's Megacast. I'm excited to welcome Alphonse, who is a DataCore product team member. Alphonse, thank you for being on. Are you there?
Yeah, thanks, David. Do you hear me well?
I do. It's great to have you on. Before you kick off your presentation here, I've got a poll that I want to bring up, and I'll share the results of this poll. So one more poll before we start our first presentation here with Alphonse. I want to call everyone's attention to. It says, how many NAS file shares do you use or manage? I see responses already coming in. Thank you, everyone. I will share the results of this. All right, Alphonse, let me share the results of this poll with you. And it says roughly 18% are managing 1 to 4 shares, 19% 5 to 9, another 19% 10 to 20, and 20% 20 or more, and 20% have no idea. So really split actually across all the options very evenly. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I would have expected a little bit more on the higher side. So it does mean on the 10 to 20 or larger than 20. But nevertheless, if you add both numbers, they say clear the majority. If you cut out, or they are the majority, if you cut out the no idea, because if you don't know the number, you cannot say what range you're in. And this poll was also somehow a brief introduction on what we're talking about, because it's all about managing unstructured data. And I will take the numbers and we'll get back to them during the presentation.
All right, excellent. We'll take it away.
Thank you very much, and also thank you very much for having us in today's webcast. The title, Disrupt Without Disruption, is all about doing much more with what you already have. So it's about leveraging existing assets, but more effectively, and also being prepared for the future. For example, the tremendous data growth, especially in the area of unstructured data. Today's session can also be seen as preparation or setting the scene for our deep dive we will have tomorrow. If you take a look at the upper right corner under handouts, the first link, this is a link to a webcast on the same platform, but with a different presenter, and it's a technical deep dive, so a full live demo of what we will discuss briefly here today on slides. And my colleague Steve Hansecker will host that tomorrow, as said, same time, same platform. Just register yourself and take a look on the proof of what I here presenting in slides. But let's get started with a problem. And the problem for unstructured data is often that there are many different places where they are stored. So you have, we call that naturally grown infrastructure, where you have different file servers or NAS systems, or different shares, just a Linux share or Windows share, which is used to exchange files. I mean, Word files, MP4 files, photos, whatever. And the problem here is that they are located on, let me say, separate islands. You can connect them, of course, with an appropriate file system to each other. Nevertheless, it's always a different access point to get those files. So if you know a file name, or even that it is a presentation or a photo, what you're looking for, you also need to know where you have stored it. So where is your access point to get through it? This is a user's perspective. If you take a look at this from a management perspective, is, for example, if you take now the dark gray one, the support filer, and it has reached its capacity. It's not simple to enlarge the capacity there, except there is some space for additional disk in that filer. But otherwise, there is really a tricky problem, or it's a tricky thing, to move the data, which should be stored under this structure, to somewhere else. Or you have to move it, which then is a painful migration. And the ideal way to overcome this issue would be if everything would be in a very large single system. But if you take a look at that, that would overcome all these problems, because users, they can easily their finds from a central catalog. They just type in that they are looking for a photo, and the photo has in its name, for example, summer, and they will find it, regardless where it is stored. And also from the administrator perspective, they have a central capability to set policies. For example, please archive all video files which were not touched during the past 6 months to a different system. But if you take a look at these large systems, which would be, and just think about that, we have 20% of the respondencies saying that they have more than 20 of those sources. Yeah? How large should the system be? And all the data from those systems, even if you have just 5 to 9 shares, they need to be migrated in such a large system. And the data migration can be painful and also very risky. And if you have that large system, what about scalability and performance of that system? Is it still ensured? And how do you take care when a hardware refresh needs to be done in a couple of years? So the entire migration process again. And this is exactly where the disrupt without disruption approach came into the game. It's the software-defined approach. By leveraging the existing resources, regardless whether this is network-attached storage, file or object storage. And here is the before and after scenario for what we have seen earlier on the both things, but in a simplified way. Because currently and today, most people have N sources, does mean N storages or N places where the data are stored, does also mean N access paths and also N management interfaces from the administrator perspective. With an abstraction, or you can also say virtualization of this, you can change this, and this will be done with software-defined storage. because after this is changed, you still have these end sources, but there is only one access point from the user's perspective and one management interface from the administrator's perspective, whereby all the existing assets are leveraged underneath. And this exactly brings me to the introduction of DataCore vFilo, which does the abstraction of file and object storage from the underlying storage hardware. It's especially created for the needs of file and object management, so for unstructured data. These requirements, or at least their level of importance, is different to the needs for structured data. For example, for structured data, often performance is a very critical factor and a key element, whereby for the majority of unstructured data, performance is just a secondary requirement. Let's have a look on what can be achieved by leveraging this software-defined storage. So, of course, you have this virtualization, and very obvious, you have everything under one roof, so you have a common catalog, and this is a consolidated namespace which covers several files and sources. So from the user perspective and also from the administrator perspective, any file can easily be found, accessed, shared, and of course also under backed up or treated in a manner the administrator would like to treat the file. The second very obvious use case is, and it's intended, I haven't touched this before, it's to leverage the cloud as lower cost storage from two angles as lower cost storage. One, of course, as an archive, to archiving infrequently used files. You need to know that here also deduplication and compression can be leveraged over the S3 interface in the background. Does mean that the space is much less needed in the cloud. But the cloud, also for companies who do not have a second or third location, can be used as backup or DR locality to store files, so meaning having additional replicas of critical files additionally stored in the cloud. And last but not least, also to scale out and load balance the data between the different data sources, so that you can keep up with the growth of unstructured data, and that you can balance not only the load but also the capacity between the available resources, so that you don't have to take care where everything is stored. Having a look how vFilo is structured, and this somehow is a description of a product. It's an overview. So what are the possible consumers? Of course, we do have the physical servers, hosting applications, of course, us users running applications on our PCs and laptops, then applications which are running in virtual machines, and of course, also an upcoming technology, applications running in containers. Typically, when we talk about unstructured data, they access their data either with NFS, SMB, or S3. And here, vFilo provides, of course, operational insights. We will talk about especially the extensible metadata later on, a little bit more detailed, because this is not a key capability, but it's important to understand the power of data about data. And this also explains how vFilo operates and what can be achieved by leveraging vFilo. A further thing, also leveraging the underlying technologies, are data migrations. And when I say data migrations, I mean fully transparent data migrations. So it does mean that data can be moved in the background without that any user will even recognize that the data are there. From the user's perspective, they are still fully accessible in the background, but in the background they are moved from one storage systems or to another, or even to the cloud, back and forth. Of course, then any kind of charting and alerts and provisioning is also covered. In terms of command and control, it's important to keep the access controls, so means the rights which are associated with each file, so they are still as they are. In addition to a very intuitive GUI as a console, we also have a command line interface, and of course also plugins for example, to provide persistent storage for container virtualizations. But one point I would like to highlight here is the file level granularity. Everything I have talked about and I will talk about can be done on file level granularity. This is especially important when you keep in mind that specific rules, and also if you would like to have several copies of just one file, they do not have to apply to a folder or to an entire system. Everything can be done on file level granularity. And of course, underneath, any kind of storage is supported. So any kind of classical box storage, typically attached with Fiber Channel or iSCSI, or if it is directly attached even with thus interfaces, then of course any kind of file services means attached via NFS or SMB. This could be, for example, the Dell EMC Isilon or any NetApp system, or just a simple Windows or Linux file share. Then local object storage via various S3 interfaces. S3 is not S3. We support a variety of those. And, of course, also leveraging the cloud, as this is one of the key use cases. We touched on this. We support all major players like AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud Storage, and many more. But in the heart of all that stuff, we do have the so-called data services. These are the data services, how the data are, let me say, handled. And here we have a lot of interesting things. No worries, I don't go through them one by one. I just touch on a few. For example, the Active Archive. The Active Archive is the one where you can move data according to the data migration and also to the data mobility seamlessly in the background. But from the user's perspective, they are still accessible, and they are also fast accessible. If somebody really opens a file and it is be brought to a cloud storage, this might take a few milliseconds longer because of the connection. But in terms of visibility, the data are still there. Or also auto placement, because based on the metadata, and we will see that later, you can set policies that data are placed to that storage or that resource in your storage pool, which fits best to the needs in terms of relevance, also cost, not only of performance. And then, of course, the global namespace, but here again, like with the S3 interface in the access methods, not to mix up with the S3 interface to the storage resources. This is in planning. This will come with a future release, but the global namespace enables you to have several installations with one single global namespace worldwide to access all these data and to have this global catalog. And the load balancing also, of course, covers the capacity balancing, so it means moving capacity or moving the data between the available capacities. Yeah, what's in? So what does anybody have out of it? So the vFilo benefits and also its differentiation. The most obvious one, of course, is control and visibility, because all unstructured data are accessed and administered centrally. From a central access point, they can follow central rules. Everybody can see what's available, of course, always according to the rights. He is allowed to see what's available. This dramatically improves the collaboration between locations and, of course, also users, because it's not about forgetting names. It's very simple to comply with business requirements through explicit policies and high-level objectives. This is something we can present in the live demo very nicely. And there you can see that, for example, if you put an additional information to the metadata that a certain file is not allowed to leave a region or even not to leave a building, this policy can be automatically applied to any file, as we talk about file level granularity, and you do not have to worry that there will be a copy in the cloud or in another service, just as an example. And of course, you're going to get new insights from the metadata, because you now have a central view on which files are used when, by whom, and you can do a little bit more with that. The next very important thing is the ultimate flexibility provided with that. So you don't have any dependencies on hardware or vendors. Does mean on the storage, which is used anyway, or on the cloud services. So you have the free choice, and you can also integrate new storage or even complete new technologies alongside to your existing environment, and you can do the data migration fully transparently for the users in the background if they're needed. And as already explained, you can keep the data where it makes most sense from the business perspective, as all the aspects relevant for the business, which of course is costs, important of the data, does, for example, mean how many copies do I need, or how many replicas do I need, where are the replicas stored. They can also be automatically taken into account and be applied to every single file. And of course, I haven't explained this so far, but you also have the capability to access the same file via multiple protocols. Currently via NFS and SMB, NFS 3 and 4, and SMB 2 and 3, and in the near future also via S3 interface. And then, last but not least, it's efficiency and simplicity, because to set up such an vFilo environment, in addition to existing infrastructure, just takes less than an hour. We will see how the setup in principle looks like, and you have then the capability to do automatic data placement, to do replication of the critical files. You have these non-disruptive data migrations, and you have this unified management and access points for different data types and profiles. Of course, also not to forget the seamless cloud integration, the graphical user interface, and the short time to value an operation. I mentioned that already, that the installation can be done in less than an hour, but also the assimilation, this is something we would take a little bit deeper look later on, is also, of course, depending on how many files and how many should be assimilated, a question of minutes and not days and weeks. Having mentioned the assimilation so often, let's have a look at the power of metadata, as mentioned earlier. So the power of metadata, data about the data, is getting deeper insights, knowing what's happening with the files and having them accessible at a single point, not in different locations, also allows a very quick search and to apply rules over your entire set of data, like we already discussed. And this is exactly how vFilo operates, because the first step when you have set up a vFilo configuration, it's the assimilation of metadata from existing diverse NAS and file systems. So this assimilation process does not touch the data at all. There is a long list of supported devices which can be assimilated, and the data remain there during the assimilation as they are. They are really untouched. There's no replacement, no migration associated with that. And of course, all the attributes remain unchanged. So they remain as they are. So the writes, timestamps, uses, everything which is known remains as they are. During that assimilation process, and also later on, also the functional parameters of the storage are measured. As said, this is not the assimilation. Before vFilo gets control over the data, it's a one-time process, and the assimilation itself does not do anything. But during the assimilation, also the functional parameters of the storage are measured. For example, is this a high available file storage? Or what is the performance? So the IOPS numbers are known to that file storage. How many capacity is free in that? So is there any capacity free? And all these parameters are measured as well, and this is an ongoing process. So if vFilo is in the inserted there, this is an ongoing process to measure all these data, because this enables then further steps. And this is, of course, then the creation of the one global, scalable, and searchable catalog. What I said, the namespace, the global namespace in the future, where we're talking about several vFilo instances, and the access for mixed protocols. Here, again, the NFS v3 and v4.2, the SMB v2, v3, and S3 in the near future. Then the balancing of data across all of the available storage systems, of course, including to leverage the cloud as very elastic extension of local capacity, but regardless between those systems, and of course, according to the policies which are previously set or manually set, you are able to move the data around between those services. This all happens dynamically if it's done by policies, and can also be done manually, but always fully transparent to the users. So the business requirements determine what would be the most appropriate storage in terms of performance, availability, costs, or whatever you determine. And this is a uniform approach or a common approach for file and object stored data. Let's have a look at an example. This is a usage example, so how your business needs to determine the best location for your data. And on this example, I need to mention that it's just a semantic example. So what you see here right now, it's a premium NAS storage or file storage. It can also be a cluster. But what is true is that of those premium systems, only at maximum 20% of the data are really active or important data to the business. Let's assume in this example the active and important data, these are the storage for your VMware server farm. So these are the active and important data, but you have a lot of inactive data. So means a lot of pictures, videos, all presentation, all PDF files, and they are hosted on this very expensive premium storage. So the majority is not so important, but it's still hosted there because this is the available file storage. File storage is easy to manage, easy to share, and it's fully integrated into the business into your business continuity concept and also into your backup concept. So this is pretty expensive to include it there. And for some NAS systems, it needs to be taken into account if they are getting close to their capacity limit, they are also getting slow, which then affects also the applications running in your VMware farm in this example. And by having the metadata and capability to set policies, those policies could easily be just applied only to those files which are less important. As said, it's a file level granularity or share level granularity as you determine. And then you could leverage affordable storage instead. Here, alternatively, just as example, it's a JBOD and some cloud storage. And here, if you move further with the non-disruptive data migrations in the background, your storage can be freezed from the inactive data, and they can be moved either on the affordable storage and 111 copies, or even deduplicated and compressed to local S3 storage or to cloud S3 storage, which then means that you have also saved storage space, and your premium storage is free for more important files. And the side effect is, if this is a system which has performance issues when it becomes nearly to full, now it's not full any longer, and the performance grows up, and everybody is happy by just having done this change. And from the user perspective, this is, as said, fully transparent. And, of course, what can be done in one direction can also be done in the other direction, so it would be possible to do it vice versa. So if a file becomes important again and is no longer not so important files or inactive, it can be, of course, again, fully transparently moved to the active and important files as well. Yeah, I already mentioned that we briefly talk about the configuration principles and how this happens. If you may remember from the overview slide, we had the consumers, and you should see them here at the top. We are talking about the virtual machines, the PCs, laptops, the physical servers, and of course also containers. This is a non-ending list. And of course the diverse resources underneath, which can be either fiber channel iSCSI block devices or SMB NFS NAS file servers or S3 object storage locally or any cloud storage. This is a typical setup, and this is the access path. When vFilo comes into the game, and this also explains how the assimilation process starts, this is mandatory in production environments to have two metadata servers. They are hosting the metadata and therefore explains the importance of the metadata, and they are the central points of administration from the administrator perspective. And they are hosting the catalog and making everything available. For test environments, also, of course, one server could be enough, but for production environments, it's mandatory to have two of those servers. And then you also need those who provide the data services to the upper consumers, and this is what we call data services server or data movers. And this exactly is the minimum configuration. You have one of them. While I'm on it, if you see here, always physical servers. These physical servers do not need to be physical servers. This can also be virtual machines, of course, but especially for the metadata servers, it's recommended to have those virtual machines on two different physical resources in terms of high availability. And here, the data service also can scale up and down as the load requires them to scale. So it's no problem to add one further. They are acting like a grid. They can be scaled up and down, and this can be extended depending on the needs. Also, the licensing is independent of the software-defined storage, how many data servers you have. So it can go up to 40. And please keep in mind the 40, this is the technical limit we tested already. So this is not a design limit. This is just a technical limit we tested. If there is the need for hundreds of petabytes of files to have more data movers, it's not a problem to increase that number. Yeah, this is a principal setup, and this is what you're going to see in the live demo tomorrow. What we have here further, the summary. So get most of your existing storage environment and be prepared for the future. This is all what we understand also under disrupt without disruption, or the motto of today's webcast day, to do more with less. You can find further information on vFilo, of course, on our product page, and I really encourage you to attend our deep dive with live demo, and of course also the option to ask questions during that webcast tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. It's also hosted by Actual Media. You find the link here. If you click just on the presentation, you can follow it, and also under the handouts, the first link goes directly to that. And yeah, this brings me to the end of the preparation for tomorrow, and possibly you may have some questions.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation, Alphonse. We do have some questions for you. Before we go to the poll question, I just want to remind everyone that the link there in the slide window is an actual hyperlink. If you mouse over it, you can click on either one of those links. The link for the deep dive is also in the handouts tab. So if you miss clicking on it right now, it will be in the handouts tab after this presentation. So let's bring up this poll question. The question on the screen for everyone out there is, what additional information would you like about the DataCore solution? And so we'll just leave that up while we do a few questions here from the audience. Alphonse, first question I see here came in from John. He's asking, how do you protect the data that's in your system? How do you, once you move data to DataCore, what's the recommended way to protect that data?
In that case, I would not say that we move the data, because we leave the data where they are. The way of protecting the data is that we're leveraging what's existing, or of course by having replicas. And the metadata determine, or the administrator determines how many replicas there are and where they are. So it does mean if there is a replica in the cloud, this was one of the examples we had, that you use the cloud as a second or third location to do replicas, or that you also do replicas between different filers, for example, between an Isilon system and a Windows share, or vice versa. This is all possible with that, and this is a way of protecting the data. And of course, it's not only one replica. You can do as many as you like, but of course, this also takes storage space in that case.
Okay. Okay. Very nice. Another question here: what are the technical minimum requirements for the servers and virtual machines that use DataCore?
Yeah, of course, they depend on how many files you would like to handle. Yeah, so there's a broad range, and they are different whether we talk about the metadata services or the data services. So the real minimum requirements we have is on a metadata service, virtual machine or physical server. It's to have at least 8 virtual CPUs, 16 gigabyte of main memory, a boot disk with 200 gigabyte, and also 2 400 gigabyte SSDs. So that would be sufficient, again, to host for the metadata servers up to or to manage 10 to 20 million files, roughly. Again, depends on many other parameters, and these are the minimum requirements. Of course, also 2 gigabit Ethernet adapters for exclusive usage need to be reserved. As said, all, again, either on virtual or bare metal environments. If you would go larger, so let's take, for example, we are talking about 1 or 100 million files, something in that area. So the requirements, of course, grow up. Then we talk about 24 virtual CPUs for the metadata servers, 64 gigabit of main memory, boot disk device, and, of course, the additional SSDs to store the metadata remain the same. But on the network adapter, we also recommend to spend more on this side as well. What the data services is, regarding the data service, they have not such a big difference. If you have not so big performance requirements, 4 vCPUs, 8 gigabit of memory should be sufficient. Of course, you can also add local storage in those metadata servers, but then it's not metadata servers, data services service. But then this data services cannot scale up and down because the data need to be accessible there. Just to give you some background, so it depends on the exact project.
Okay. Okay. Very nice. And I know we're running out of time here. There's still some questions there for you in the queue, Alphonse. Before we go, tell us why people should join the event tomorrow again.
In a very simple manner. You have seen a lot of theory, and also the questions show that there are still open points how this works and how this operates. And tomorrow they see how this really going to get set up and how this can be seen. And what I've told here as strong statements, as we say in Germany, tomorrow there will be the proofs for those strong statements.
Okay, very nice. I like it. All right. Well, it's been great having you on the event today. Thank you so much, Alphonse.
Thank you very much for having us, and also thank you very much to the audience for listening to the brief presentation.
Excellent. For more information on DataCore, check out the link that's there in your handouts tab that will take you to the demo event that we'll be holding tomorrow, where you can see the product in action. And now it's time for our first prize drawing. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Sydney Chow from New Jersey. Congratulations, Sydney Chow from New Jersey. And our first grand prize, an Oculus Rift, going to Brian Teeter from Indiana. Congratulations, Brian Teeter from Indiana. All right, and now it's my pleasure to introduce our next presenter on today's Megacast. That is Tori Sikowicz, Inside VM Product Marketing Manager at Rapid7. Tori, are you there?
I am. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being on the event today. Take it away.
Great. Well, hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well today. I'm really excited to be here to talk about boosting IT efficiency with Rapid7's Insight VM, which is Rapid7's vulnerability risk management solution. My name is Tori Sikowicz, and I am a product marketing manager at Rapid7 specifically for vulnerability management. So I just want to give you a quick layout of what I'm hoping to cover in these next 20 minutes. We're first going to talk about the big challenge that exists with vulnerability risk management programs today, and then we'll look at a new way of achieving success and overcoming that challenge. followed by how Insight VM can really help you here in achieving the success. And then we'll look at reasons to believe in Insight VM, followed by who Rapid7 is as a company, and then I believe we'll have some time for Q&A at the very end. So to jump right in, we know that the remediation process today is built on a broken foundation. And let's look at why that is. When we think about it, there is a serious lack of clarity and communication when it comes to security at organizations. Think about how challenging it can be to not only gain visibility into your environment, but also to ensure that your stakeholders across the organization are aware of and are really bought into your security program's objectives and initiatives. It's really, really tough. We think of vulnerability risk management as a cycle, but it's a cycle where the work to understand risk and reduce risk is split. In the understanding risk side, we have discovery, enumeration, and prioritization, and this is really all handled by the security team, whereas reducing risk, which is the remediation work, is really handled by IT operations and development teams. So the challenge here is that IT and development teams oftentimes have competing priorities like uptime that don't always align with security's priority to reduce risk. And so oftentimes what we see is that security teams struggle to get IT operations and development teams' attention. And once they do actually influence these teams' priorities, they then face the reality of a team that has more tasks than time. And then security teams, let me hit next here. Security teams often face unattainable measures of success. Have you ever been in a situation where you're reporting on an aggregate risk score to your board and let's say a Patch Tuesday happens right before your board meeting, which causes that aggregate score to spike? Then you're stuck trying to explain that all of these patches that just came out they aren't really indicative of all the work that your team has accomplished. So no doubt determining the right metrics to measure your success is also very difficult. So what does this really all boil down to? This boils down to executing on a successful security program and then furthermore proving its efficacy is almost impossible. Here are just some proof points that really lend themselves to this huge challenge. Only 16% of executives say that their companies are well prepared to deal with cyber risk. This really hits on how difficult it is to prove the efficacy of a security program and really gain leadership support and leadership's buy-in. And then 54% of executives state that risk reports are too technical. 22% of security decision makers note that their team being understaffed as one of their biggest security challenges. So again, this hits on the challenge of really executing on a successful security program. I think that one of our customers, Kurt Hazel, who's an IT security manager for a financial services organization, he really sums this problem up nicely. And he says, the biggest problem in security is not about, hey, there's an issue here, but rather it's about telling the story about it, what it means to the business, and how to remediate it. So how could things be different for you? We're going to look at 3 crucial areas that you need to execute on in order to prove the efficacy of your program. And these are the areas that Insight VM can really help you achieve. So first, you need to gain clarity into risk and across teams. And we're not just talking about visibility into vulnerabilities, but we're also talking about visibility into the operations, objectives, and impact of security programs for stakeholders across the organization. And once you gain this clarity into risk and across teams, this results in a truly deeper understanding of risk, and you will also have alignment among teams towards common goals. Second, you need to extend security's influence. You need to, break down silos that exist between security and IT and development teams by having a common language and shared objectives with these technical teams. And once you do this, teams are then able to be held accountable for the work that needs to be done to actually reduce risk in the organization. And then the third thing is you need to see shared progress. And by progress, what we realize is that oftentimes security teams aren't really celebrated for all of the accomplishments and achievements that they're making. And that's oftentimes because it's really difficult to articulate, the progress that you're making in your program. So when we're able to have leadership and different teams see progress that we're making on the security front, it's that much easier to gain buy-in from those teams. So with execution in these three areas, you can actually prove the efficacy of your security program. And we're going to give you some concrete examples of how Insight VM really helps you do this in just a minute. But I did want to call out that, today we are focusing all on Insight VM, but we have a suite of products and services for vulnerability management that are just worth calling out. At Rapid7, we offer managed vulnerability management, and we also have Insight AppSec, which is our dynamic application security testing tool, along with managed application security. And then we also offer Metasploit Pro, which is a penetration testing tool for offensive security teams. And with that, we also offer penetration testing services. So when we think of vulnerability risk management, when we think of this process, we know that there are some key functional areas that need to be met. Of course, you need to first have visibility of your environment. You need to assess your environment for risk and then prioritize that risk. And then you're going to need to remediate the vulnerabilities or misconfigurations that exist, and of course, be measuring and tracking progress throughout the process. Well, with Insight VM, we've taken the ideas of clarity, influence, and progress that we just talked about, and we've really woven them throughout the vulnerability risk management process to ensure that you're able to not only drive success of your security program, but prove the success of your program along the way. So now let's look at some key ways that Insight VM actually helps you do this. Starting first with gaining clarity into risk and across teams. In order to drive the best security outcomes, we know that you have to be able to handle massive volumes of data. But as long as humans still play a role in information security, you will need a way to gain overall insight into your world in a simple way. And one way we do this in Insight VM is with a dashboard level view. Now, most dashboards are static reports. You may be familiar with those. Well, with Insight VM, we have what we call live dashboards that use fresh data to feed threat exposure analytics so that you can visualize, you can prioritize, and assign and fix your exposures. And we allow you to tailor the KPIs and information to your needs in your role. So, for example, if you're a CISO, we expect that you'll want to gain a better understanding of, whether or not you're making improvements from yesterday to today. You may be wondering, what is the value add of this program? Are the teams doing what they're supposed to be doing? Is the investment I made returning value? Whereas if you're part of a security operations team, you may be wondering, are your scans actually running? Are they successful? And you may want to understand the hygiene of the product. Is the product really running the way it's supposed to run? And then if you're on the remediations team, these live dashboards will really give you visibility into the remediation steps that are key for you. So live dashboards contain, as I said, the freshest security data you need in the right context that's tailored to the audience that you need to be communicating with. And these really allow you to dig deep to give more insight to what you're looking to drive. And I do just want to call out that Insight VM also offers more static, like PDF reports for stakeholders at all levels of the organization as well, including leadership. So now we talked about one of the big challenges of executing on a successful vulnerability risk management program is really around, the silos that exist between security, and IT operations and development teams. So let's talk about how Insight VM can help security extend its influence by really breaking down these silos and speaking the same language as their technical counterparts, which really helps to hold teams accountable for getting the needed work done. Effective security metrics are frequently used to drive security performance improvements and overall risk reduction, but they're often not relevant to the business, and they're difficult to quantify, and they're also really difficult to communicate. Well, that's why we have Rapid7's Insight VM's goals and SLAs. This is why we've developed this feature to really help security teams define relevant and meaningful metrics so that they're able to set goals against them, and they're also able to track individual and team progress and receive alerts when goals are achieved or when goals are missed. So the goals and SLA feature allows security teams to know what they should focus on and what they need to do to achieve their goals. It also it enables better communication with others in the company in a way that they can understand. Specifically, email notifications can automatically be sent for any changes in goal status so that you can really avoid the manual tracking efforts. And if you add your goal to your dashboard, it will display graphically so that you can see progress at a glance. Now, Insight VM offers 3 different types of goal metrics that can be tracked. And the first one I want to talk about is time-bound goals. When we say time-bound goal, this lets you specify metrics for assets and vulnerabilities and assign a target date so that you can track your progress as your deadline approaches. So as an example, you can create a time-bound goal to remove 100% of Windows 7 desktops across the entire organization by a specific date. And these time-bound goals have static scope, which means that the scope of assets or vulnerabilities will be defined at the time that the goal is created, and those will not change. So even if there are new assets or vulnerabilities found later on, those will not then be added into this time-bound goal. Another type that we have is what we call continuous goals. And a continuous goal lets you monitor progress or criteria without a time limit, so such as a rule or a key performance indicator. As an example here, if you want all your external-facing assets to have a closed SSH port, you can track this with a continuous goal. And these have dynamic scope, which means that any new asset or vulnerability discovered will be part of the metric as it's discovered. And then the third thing that we have here are SLAs, or service level agreements. And a service level agreement goal lets you track overall remediation of certain policies over a dynamic time span. So as an example, you could set out to remediate 100% of critical vulnerabilities in production environments within 3 days of discovery, or you could remediate 75% of Windows servers within a 15 days of asset discovery date. And these SLAs also have dynamic scope, just like those continuous goals. And now let's talk about how Insight VM can help you see shared progress, which is that third element that we had mentioned. So we talked about clarity, we talked about influence, and now we're talking about progress. Regardless of the sophistication of your reporting and analysis, remediation really spans across assets and across organizational structures. So security teams, they're marching uphill, tracking progress of remediation items, using different workflow systems of the various remediating parties, and these one-off communications. The process is truly cumbersome, and it's hard for a security practitioner to service many assets and owners. Working with IT operations and development teams to make progress in reducing risk, as we all know, is really, really tough. Well, Insight VM's remediation projects really provide hands-on, built-for-purpose views of remediation data across the organization, which reduces friction and effort for security teams and remediators, regardless of their organization. these projects are designed to really take that burden off of your security team so that you can focus on driving your program forward. There isn't a vulnerability management team on the planet that hasn't been affected by productivity draining reporting and emails and ticketing and one-off vulnerability verification requests. So remediation projects really let you assign out remediations. These really serve as living, breathing versions of the more traditional spreadsheets that have commonly been used by security teams. And rather than going line by line based on vulnerability, we instead said, hey, let's go based on solution, because oftentimes, especially if we sort by risk reduction, we may have scenarios where a single solution will close multiple vulnerabilities. And on top of this, InsightVM's remediation projects will really spell out how to fix things. What are the exact steps needed to patch something? When you create a project in InsightVM, you have the ability of going through and setting up your filters and the scope of your project, and then you can assign it to a user. You can even send a read-only version out to folks if you want who maybe don't have access to InsightVM. And then, you set a due date so that you can track that particular remediation. And on top of all of this, if you're using ticketing systems like ServiceNow or Jira, InsightVM can send tickets directly over to those solutions right from the UI. So, we talked about we need to speak the same language as our technical counterparts doing the remediation work. And if you've got teams that say, look, we operate out of ServiceNow or Jira tickets, then this is a really great way to deliver the information to them, because your buy-in with those teams is going to be higher. You're really meeting those teams where they're comfortable working, which is huge. For the past several years, Rapid7 has been hard at work building the Insight platform, which provides visibility through unified data collection, analytics, and automation for all of our Insight products. So, today we focus on InsightVM, and I also talked about some of the other vulnerability management offerings that we have, but I did want to take the time right now to also call out our other product offerings that make up the Insight Cloud. So we offer Insight IDR, which is our cloud-based SIEM. We, as I mentioned, have Insight AppSec. That's our dynamic application security testing tool. We also have Insight Connect, which is our security orchestration and automation tool. And we have our services wing, which really helps you set up and use Rapid7 products, but it also helps with completely product agnostic things like cybersecurity maturity assessments or virtual CISO engagements or those penetration tests that I had mentioned earlier. So just wanted to take a moment to call that out. And, we looked at some of the capabilities that InsightVM has, but what proof do we have that Rapid7's InsightVM actually delivers on the value that we've talked about today? Well, Forrester Consulting was commissioned on behalf of Rapid7 to conduct a total economic impact study of InsightVM. And a total economic impact study, essentially just means a return on investment study. And so I wanted to call out some of the findings that they had from that study, where they interviewed they interviewed 5 different customers, they gathered data, and they looked at what value have these customers seen since switching from their incumbent vulnerability risk management solutions over to InsightVM. And what they've seen is a 342% ROI over 3 years. They've seen 22% reduction in false positive alerts. By the way, these are all on average based off of all the interviews. They've seen $2.3 million savings over 3 years since making the switch to InsightVM. They've seen 60% reduction in patching efforts and 33% reduction in investigation efforts. So pretty significant findings. And in addition to these stats, InsightVM has also been recognized by Forrester as a leader in the 2019 Forrester Vulnerability Risk Management Wave. And Insight VM was also, we received recognition as Customer's Choice in 2019 for Gartner Peer Insights. So that's just a bit of those proof points behind the value of Insight VM. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about Rapid7 as a whole and who we are and really what we stand for. Our mission at Rapid7 is to help organizations securely advance. And we do this through a few different ways. First, through our technology, which is really best manifested through our Insight Cloud platform that I just mentioned. We, of course, spent this presentation focusing specifically on our flagship product, Insight VM. And then second, through our expertise, both our security researchers who work tirelessly to understand what's happening out in the wild and give their findings back to the security community to try and make everyone better informed, and through our security consultants who are our experts available for hire, part of that services wing that I spoke about a few minutes ago. And then finally, we help organizations securely advance through our activities within the security community. So we're very proud to be the home of Metasploit Framework, which is the world's most used penetration testing framework. And we're also active in threat intelligence communities where we contribute our threat intelligence back, but we're also very large consumers of threat intelligence that we include in our products like Insight VM. So that's just a little bit of background on who we are at Rapid7. And then before we switch over to Q&A, I just wanted to point out, if you're interested in any of the capabilities that you saw within the past 20 minutes and you'd like to try Insight out for free, we do offer a 30-day free trial. So you can gain access to that free trial by visiting the URL that you're seeing on your screen right now, which is rapid7.com/trial/InsightVM. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand it back over to you, David, for any questions that may have come in.
Absolutely. Yeah, great presentation, Tori. We do have some questions for you. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up the poll for our audience. And that poll says, what additional information would you like about the Rapid7 solution? And we'll just leave that up while we do some Q&A here. So let's see. First question that came in, they're asking, we might as well get this one out of the way at the start. How is Insight VM priced?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. So Insight VM is licensed per asset. And what we mean by asset is any system that is assessed for vulnerabilities or misconfigurations. So we're not referring to IP addresses because we know that, for example, our servers can oftentimes have multiple IP addresses. So we make sure that we're going by asset and that we're not charging you multiple times for the same asset. And we do have pricing on our website. So if you do visit our site and go under Insight VM's pricing, you can see that Insight VM starts at $22 per asset. And then it goes down significantly the more assets that you buy. I also just want to be clear on the fact that for that per asset price, everything available in Insight VM is included. So we don't do any sort of like modularized pricing. Every capability that we have for Insight VM is included in that flat fee. And then, when it comes to containers, which we do offer container assessment within Insight VM, we don't actually license based on number of containers or container size. We really only care about the host. So from a container perspective, hosts are all that roll into the license, not the containers themselves. And so we keep it nice and simple from a licensing perspective.
Very nice. Yeah, simple is good. Let's see. I know you covered a lot, but this question is outside of what you talked about today. Are there other ways that Insight VM can boost IT efficiency?
So, unfortunately with 20 minutes, didn't have time to go into all of Insight VM's capabilities, but there are certainly other ways that we help with IT efficiency. The big thing that comes to mind for me right now are our built-in automation workflows. So and these really help stop doing those mundane and repetitive and time-consuming tasks. We have both automation-assisted patching and automated containment that are offered in Insight VM. So, the automation-assisted patching we're able to do that with built-in workflows, with integrations with patch management tools like BigFix and SCCM. And then when it comes to automated containment, we have integrations with network access control systems, firewalls, and endpoint detection and response tools to help contain those vulnerabilities that maybe you're just not able to remediate for whatever reason, and you just need to contain them. We have those integrations with Palo Alto, Cisco, Firepower, and Carbon Black.
Okay, very nice, very nice. Another question here. I know with security, compliance is always a big deal. What kind of reporting options are available?
Sure, yeah. So I covered a little bit on reporting when we looked at the live dashboards. Those are certainly a good way to slice and dice data, and you can definitely find ways to report there. But we also we offer static reporting as well. So two very popular reports that we have on the static side are our executive report, which really measures trends and risk month over month. And then we also have a top 25 remediations report. This is really great for working with, talking about boosting IT efficiency. This is really great with working with those IT teams to provide step-by-step solutions for, your top 25 remediations. So, and those are just simply two. We have a bunch of different other types of reports that are customizable as well.
Very nice, very nice. Well, there's lots of other great comments that came in. Ethan said Rapid7 looks like a really valuable tool. Let's see. Got good feedback from Charles on the integration with ticketing systems, and lots of other good feedback. I love the user interface, by the way. I wanted to mention that. I'm a big fan of user interfaces. So really great presentation. Yeah, thank you so much for being on the event today, Tori.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for tuning in. Really appreciate it.
All right, for more information on Rapid7, visit their website, rapid7.com. Check out the handout that's available for download there in your audience console. And, of course, you can go to their website and you can give the free trial a spin for yourself. I encourage you to check it out. Looks like a great resource, a great tool for improving security at your IT organization and making security more efficient. Of course, that's what we all need is greater efficiency. And with that, it's time for our next prize drawing. We do have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Trey Araby from Texas. Congratulations, Trey Araby from Texas. And our second grand prize, another Oculus Rift, going to James O'Dwyer from California. Congratulations, James O'Dwyer from California. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our next presenter on today's Megacast. I'm excited to welcome Mr. Patrick Hubbard, head geek at Solarwinds. Patrick, are you there?
I am. Thank you so much for having me. It's really great that we're actually starting off this Megacast, or at least I'm following security because I think that's a big part of efficiency, and it's one of the things that almost always comes last.
Excellent. Take it away, Patrick.
All right. Okay, well, welcome to the presentation here, and this one is IT efficiency requires more than just great tools. I've really wanted to talk about this for a while. This is something that we talk about with our customers a lot, and it really is, it's not exactly spiritual, but it really goes to the foundation of who we are as IT professionals and what we can really do to drive the business forward. I am Patrick Hubbard, and I'm a head geek here at SolarWinds. Think of that as an evangelist, but more sort of an advocate who works directly with customers and is really focused on helping them solve problems. I've been at SolarWinds since 2007. Currently, my government title is Technical Product Marketing Manager Principal, but my background, I started in IT as a developer, believe it or not, and I came to IT, that's why I list DevOps up there, back in the late 90s, because I thought, hey, we could bring kind of development processes and cultures to IT. And what I discovered instead was IT just simply wasn't ready for that. I had made a lot of assumptions, like a lot of technologists do, that there just must be all kinds of organization and that the efficiency and automatability of infrastructure was great. And so I kind of changed. I pivoted and realized that where we really needed to help folks in IT was actually using products and really thinking about how they were going to affect strategy. We've been helping with cycles in technology for years. And the thing that I've really come to realize lately is that hybrid IT and increasing complexity are probably the single biggest drivers of not just time and toil, but also reducing efficiency. And so what I want to do is talk about one big idea. Not so much tools and technology. I mean, Solarwinds has over 60 products that cover pretty much everything in the span of IT, from networking, application management, storage, virtualization, now cloud, service desks, and even MSP technologies. So instead of talking about individual products, I really want to talk about how to get the most out of what you have, in a lot of cases with what you already have. And so the thing that I want to start with is to remind you that efficiency is not an overlay. You cannot buy your way into efficiency. It is a culture. And that's good because it means that you already probably have everything that you need to make pretty substantial improvements in efficiency. But it's a problem in that things that are culture-based mean human change. So let's talk about that just for a second. Yeah, I think we've all learned this, right? And sometimes the hard way. I mean, security is one of those, right? Security and compliance. You're like, hey, we're gonna do periodic scanning, and that's gonna make us secure. Well, no, it doesn't. And sort of the idea of, oh, I'm gonna build out CI/CD pipelines and really focus on DevOps and becoming agile. But if you bring in tools, if you build pipelines and you can't get people to start using them, then you're still adding additional complexity and you're fracturing your teams more. And then how many times do we think, oh, we're gonna achieve resiliency with lots and lots of backups, but if you're not recovery testing, if you're not ensuring that you can actually bring business services back up from those backups, you really don't have backups. And so the point there is that efficiency in a box just isn't a thing, right? It needs to be built into the tools that you use every day, and that you use every day, because every time you bring in something else, every time you add more stuff, maybe just scale out, you're increasing complexity. Complexity increases, has an effect on efficiency. And then usually, if you can increase efficiency, you can actually increase agility. I mean, that's the big pressure right now. A lot of conversation used to be about transformation, and now it's more about modernization. But especially if you were trying to do the most that you can with the infrastructure you have, efficiency really lets you pivot. It lets you align with business goals much, much more quickly, and that's the thing that the CIO's office is really looking for. So what I want to try to get across is to get us to accept that IT's mission might be efficiency. I think maybe we don't want to believe that. We think, oh, well, it's something we're going to get to, or maybe it provides some measured benefit. But I would argue that efficiency goes to the heart of what we do in IT, and that it's okay to say that. It's okay to be proud of that, and I'll tell you why. Once upon a time, I was going to go to once upon a time. Once upon a time, computers were a thing, right? Your business might have one, and another business might still be doing everything in paper. They may be tabulating with cards, who knows? And those mainframes had the kind of funding that we could only dream about, because they were driving huge advantages for the businesses that owned them. There was no question about whether they were valuable, whether they were delivering ROI, and they got whatever they needed. It's also interesting to note that at that time, the majority of people who were graduating from computer science programs were actually women. It was an academic focus. These were computer scientists. The very best and brightest people were being brought to these systems, and you never had to worry that you were going to have resources. But now, it's all commodity, right? You have the same catalogs to pick from, the same vendors, and pretty much in your racks and racks and racks, or especially with the commoditization of cloud, all of the same technology that all of your competitors do. So what happens when that happens? When something gets commoditized? Well, now you win on price. What can you deliver with the cost and the investment that you have going in? And that's okay. It's okay to realize that, because if you think about that, if you think, hey, the other company has exactly the same stuff, how am I using it more effectively, more efficiently to actually win in the marketplace, to deliver services and capabilities that other people can't? So it's really about being smart and thinking about it from that perspective. So I would start with a couple of pieces of advice. First, do not guess what you have. Take a real inventory, because the rate of change, especially with new technologies especially new technologies, complexity is really accelerating, and it's no longer possible to track your infrastructure with Excel and Visio. You might get close, you might get most of it, but especially with hybrid, the rack really isn't the center of operations now, right? It's the application. Physical hardware and networks are really supporting those components. Once upon a time, you could just start with a rack diagram or a data center diagram and map applications, but especially with cloud and hyperconverged, there isn't a rack and really not a lot of network. So start with your applications and then let your discovery tools work outward to discover the infrastructure that supports them. And that's the way that you're not going to miss anything. And when you are trying to be efficient, every little bit of orphaned resources that you can find is essentially free capability to you. The reason I think maybe we end up with so much stuff that we don't know that we have access to is that when a budget is really healthy, it's easy to add new capability and new technology, right? So the only thing is that the more that technology that you're adding, the more that there is to manage, right? So as the breadth of management increases, the more stuff that you are doing, efficiency is going to decrease unless you add additional staff or automation or expertise. And the question really is your CIO asking the same questions, right? Are these expenditures delivering on the goals of the business? And when you can answer yes to that question with actual data, you're likely to get more budget. Because, think about it. These are business people. They are thinking about return on investment. If I invest, do I get return? And if they see investment that's working, they will double down on it. So you're competing with the rest of the business for resources, and if you can generate reports that show that as new technology is added, as new capability is added, that the services that you're delivering are getting better, that's going to make it a lot easier to at least keep the budget that you have in place. The other thing is that, we kind of have this habit of thinking that as long as performance improves with spend, we really feel okay, right? So is that performance really improving, or is it anecdotal? And so when you really get to it, can you look at all of the data side by side along with change information, right? Are you in a place where you can look at inventory of what you have? Can you measure the performance of all elements of that inventory and then look to see how that performance is changing as you are manipulating that environment? Especially when you can make that information available to the broad team, so the security team or the virtualization team or your cloud management team or the DevOps team or any other team is all focused on shared metrics. You can apply metrics that actually measure efficiency and service delivery alongside of the things that they would typically use for troubleshooting or capacity planning or any number of other routine tasks during your day. So again, getting everything together in one place where you can see it, discovering unused resources. There's nothing better than looking at a bunch of metrics and realizing you have whole systems that are just essentially flatline with low CPU utilization, low memory. That is fantastic. But like with cloud, if you think about it, low utilization of resources is actually a bad thing. If you're horizontally scaled and you have lots and lots of assigned resources, you're overpaying. So now you need to really be thinking like, am I running at 50%? Can I deliver an application with great performance but actually be pegging my servers a little bit harder in order to decrease the number of instances that I'm paying for by the hour? Metrics are more important than ever before, and especially when they're all connected. So the way to get that, though, is that it's based on your discovery. And if your discovery systems are not a one-tier system like everything else, like the systems that it actually supports, it is not an effective efficiency service, or at least it won't be as effective as it could be. Basic example of that, right? You think about an individual admin sitting in their cube, they can be incredibly effective. You know people in your organization who can literally work magic, but that only can happen if they know where to start. And it doesn't matter how many you have or how great they are. If they are spending all of their time either trying to identify where work needs to happen, where changes need to happen, where security needs to be applied, or researching the scope of the changes that they're going to make, that is going to slow them down. The other thing is that your discovery has got to be multi-method. It has got to use a whole bunch of different protocols. It needs to be aware of applications, about connectivity, about the networks that support it, about the end user experience of how those applications are delivered, about the status of backups. It needs to be broad. It needs to reach beyond the boundaries of your data center, out past the firewall, into cloud or other isolated resources. It needs to have detailed information, and it has to be automated. It has to run all the time. You cannot occasionally run discovery, because as the data becomes more stale, your efficiency is going to decline over time. There's a lot of tools. I mean, if you sort of look at VROPs, for example, that do some amazing things in terms of automation. But the other thing is that when you have automation, change rate goes up, and that need for more accurate information goes up as well. So the data becomes staler the more automation you have in place. The other thing is make sure everyone has access to that data. Having one common set of information, especially when it comes to the way that your infrastructure is connected and how the resources are shared, is a great way to actually get teams to communicate more broadly and more rapidly. And that, again, will save you a ton of time with manual processes that could instead be spent on actually solving problems. The other thing to remember is that when tools share topology information, is it really reduces senior admin distraction, because a lot of times if you have that one person or that one team that actually knows where everything is, and you've got people walking up behind them, you got a second, they're on Slack asking them questions, hey, where is this thing? Reducing their distraction is really, really important. So making sure that that shared view across all of your tools is available to everyone has a big benefit on performance. And then the last is that there are so many different consumers for that infrastructure awareness, right? If you're talking about making changes, configuration changes to network systems, you're talking about virtualization optimization components, you're talking about being able to optimize and identify, let's say, IOPS issues for storage, or be able to determine whether cloud workloads are behaving the way that they're supposed to, or maybe dipping them against how they work on-prem. That infrastructure awareness is how people are going to be able to make those comparisons, and it's going to be the jumping off place that they're going to use to launch all the other tools that they need to manage those resources. And again, try to avoid updating manual Visio diagrams manually. I mean, I can't tell you how many of those I've done over the years. There is a reason that we do them, but if you can move past them, that is really, really handy. Okay, second, automation is a thing. It's a real thing, and it's a thing that you should invest in, even if you are not high-performing DevOps, agile environments where the focus is actually on a whole lot of new technology that is focused specifically on automation. So I'll give you an example of that. I mean, if you hear a lot of people that are using those terms, right? Hey, we're moving to SRE, and we're going to build fully automated pipelines, and everything that we do is we're going to be able to do 1,000 deployments a day. That is great. That is a fantastic goal, and I do not want to discourage you. I'm a huge fan of Jenkins. However, it is not the only true way. Chances are you may already have what you need to reduce a lot of the manual processes that you already have. Because remember that unplanned break fix, especially as a result of configuration changes, is the #1 cause of disruption in IT. I mean, disruption kills efficiency like nothing else. And so look at unused discovery tools that you may already have. Look at the ability to have workflows. Look for security and self-service tools, and being able to do things like route approvals, or to be able to use any number of other automation capabilities that are likely already built into the tools that you use. Especially maybe identify the top 10 that your team uses every day, and just take a minute and dive into the release notes and see if there's a bunch of unused features that you're not taking advantage of. You know, nobody likes to do upgrades, but it can be a huge advantage on picking up new capabilities, because if you look at the tools that you have, you look at what is available now from a number of vendors, there is a ton of automation capability, and so investing a little bit of time in discovering what those tools can actually do can save you a ton of time. if you are so disposed, advanced orchestration really can be a good investment. I mean, I started as a developer. I still write code almost every week. I love it. I think I can code my way out of any corner. But just remember that you can be adding maintenance debt as a result of a lot of homegrown automation. So when you're deciding, do I buy it or do I build it or what do I build, think about what might happen if a senior developer or someone else who actually created that automation left the organization. Would you be able to maintain it over time? And this comes down to more sort of architecture and application decision making, but be thinking about if someone writes a script even, am I going to be able to maintain that over time? And as long as the answer is yes, then it is probably going to be a good investment. But again, if you look at companies like VMware, they're basically betting their future on the fact that orchestration and automation are going to be the things that saves us from accelerating complexity and new technology. And then the other thing, of course, is that when you automate anything, trust your automation. You are basing a lot of your efficiency on it, but monitor it. Because when the automation breaks, and like everything else in infrastructure, it will break, you're going to have to troubleshoot it. And you're going to need good old-fashioned troubleshooting details to fix it. The other thing is that once you start relying on automation, you expect that your rate of change goes up, and so the demands on being able to be back up and running as quickly as possible to essentially break-fix your automation infrastructure, those pressures are increasing, and so being able to have that information readily at hand and available to the team is really important. Okay, so let's talk about what some of those candidates might be for automation, right? So one of those, obviously, staging and deployment. Hey, if you've adopted CI/CD pipelines, that's fantastic. The closer you can get it to that last mile of deployment, especially when you can do automated testing, it will save you a ton of time and really help you increase overall efficiency. But again, just basic scripting of routine tasks can get really, really close. And it's also a great way to help your team begin to experiment with automation and begin to realize its value before hitting them with something that's much more complex. You're not asking them to be developers. You're saying, hey, listen, I know that you have in your head amazing expertise on solving this one thing or deploying this package or making a change to the network. Let's just get it into an artifact that can execute without you being on the keyboard. That's a big part of that changing culture and changing hearts and minds one at a time is they discover all of a sudden they're not automating themselves out of a job, they're actually automating themselves into a career. Because again, they become force multipliers and they are really helping drive efficiency, which is of course what we are all doing. The second thing, of course, backups are fantastic. Being able to do automated recovery is really important. But just remember that, I mean, I don't know how many of you have had a recovery failed at 3 o'clock in the morning when something went down, but that turns into an all-hands on-deck emergency. So being able to make sure that you can automate your recovery, at least your recovery testing, and be able to document what's necessary, that is really, really critical. There is, of course, a learning curve, and so you're going to need to build a lab. But sandbox learning is just so much easier and just so much more efficient than trying to find a safe place, a little alcove inside of your production environment where you might be able to experiment with automation. VM optimization, especially based on recommendations of live data from your individual bespoke, I don't want to call it a snowflake environment, but like every one of our environments is different. And so if you were just thinking like, hey, these are best practices for optimizing my VM infrastructure or optimizing my cloud hosting infrastructure, those are great. But because your environment is unique, even though it's made out of commodity parts, the data that backs up your optimization and recommendation hints has got to come from the data from your environment. The last one, of course, network configuration change. I mean, I think we all do this. Once upon a time wasn't too bad on the command line. I've gotten a little bit rusty over the years. But if you were making all of your changes on the command line, you are bottlenecked at the administrator that's making those changes based on their skills and ability. So look for tools that provide form-based requests to allow self-service, to be able to route approvals, maybe from less senior engineers to more senior engineers, especially if you have sensitive security issues, you have specific devices maybe where there's regulatory compliance, especially those that can provide tracking, where if everything that happens in the system is tracked, that's going to save you all the overhead of actually building tracking and monitoring processes that are manual. And then being able to automatically execute changes, especially across across broad swaths of your network with one console will save you a ton of time. The goal there is that the more you can increase your reach, speed, and especially reduce the number of configuration errors, again, you're reducing break fix, you're accelerating change, and you're driving efficiency. So again, it is great to be able to talk about security, and I'm moving this up a little bit in this talk instead of doing it last, because security is actually an opportunity to drive efficiency. We don't always think of it that way, but it really is. So take a moment and realize that a security posture can save you a ton of time and give you flexibility to assign resources to other more pressing issues, right? If you have ever had a security breach, you know what happened, right? That was mayhem. Everything pretty much ground to a halt. There was nothing else to do in IT, and chances are you might actually have a bunch of recovery issues, or as a result of that breach, you now have discovered that you have a number of security vulnerabilities that you didn't know anything about, and you're going to be remediating those too, and everything else is going to grind to a halt. So establish a plan as a team. Really define what your security posture is, and then practice communications. Talk about what would happen in a crisis and be ready to go. The other thing is try to bake security into the tasks and the everyday tools that your team is using, so no matter how changes are made, security is included in the process. This goes back to that not doing overlay security, where the goal is you make the right thing to do, the easy thing to do, and people will do the right thing. So when security changes are made, where vulnerability scanning is added, where regulatory compliance is a part of those changes, then you don't have to worry about yet another task to ensure that the changes that you're making are secure, because the tools themselves will help enforce that security. The other one is take a minute to stage some common security reports in advance of audits, right? I think we have all had that experience where we scrambled when we got an audit to provide to provide data that the auditor was asking for, and that is another enormous efficiency killer. And it always seems to come at exactly the wrong time, especially if you are subject to random audits, and all of a sudden you're thinking, hey, this is our big deployment weekend, and now we're going to do an audit. Because really, the other thing is that auditors really don't want to be there any more than you want to have them there. I mean this in the nicest way for InfoSec. We are doing the right thing, focusing on security. But if you can answer their questions quickly, if you have reports that can give them the confidence that your environment actually has a real functioning security posture, that goes a long way to not only being able to get back to doing what you really want to do, which is focus on IT, but it also is going to help your management reassure the governing body or whoever is driving those audits that you really do have it together, and it's going to stop a lot of conversation and justification, and it reduces worry. And worry also digs into your efficiency, because where leadership is worried about risk, there's a lot of conversation to help make them feel more confident. Again, being able to answer those questions quickly will save more time there, where you could be talking about how you're actually going to make changes that the business is requesting. And that's really the crux of this, is that the bonus is that you're also protecting the business, right? Security is the right thing to do, and making it easy, making it a part of the tools that you're using every day means that you're doing the right thing for the business, and you're saving yourself potentially another big loss of efficiency in remediating security issues. All right. Another piece of advice is, I know we all love our help desks, right? Break fix is what we do. We have people call in. We have people go to a website and they create tickets. But if you can move past the idea of a ticket, if you can start thinking about incidences and workflows and opportunities to automate that come from a service desk, you can save even more time, and time not just in IT, but across the whole business. And a lot of times it seems like a nice to have, right? But it really is fundamentally different. If you think about it, there's a number of studies available online. Google will find these for you quickly, that talk about the time savings that are freed up by automating workflows that typically would go through a help desk. And especially those resources tend to be level 2 and 3 senior administrators who have a lot of other things that they would much rather be doing. So think about that. Like if the only thing that you're doing is being able to automate some percentage of the tasks that would normally be part of a manual help desk flow, you are effectively reassigning their time back to other issues in IT, and they turn into force multipliers. There is one note there, which is that when you create a service desk, it is going to require just a little bit of work, right? So the first thing is make sure you're running regular reports to figure out how the assigned workflows that you've created, the task, automation integration can be more efficient. Again, the focus there, efficiency, like how much time are we saving from each one of these workflows? And the other thing is build a service catalog of routine requests, and then tweak that over time. If you're trying to keep that number small and you're trying to create tasks that are more useful to more people in your organization, then you can start to expand that catalog over time to include non-IT requests that seem to always come in, right? How many things are running through your help desk today that are for all practical purposes facilities requests? Or maybe they're HR requests, or maybe they're benefits requests, where it comes into the help desk, there's a manual assignment task, or maybe there's a rule, or maybe somebody drops out. In this case, like really being able to help the business become more efficient is something that we can not only do inside of IT, but using your service desk, you can actually use IT's ability to run more efficiently and use efficiency as a competitive advantage to other teams outside of the IT team. One thing to remember too, though, is that IT just cannot be the largest customer of IT. I think that out there are probably 50% of you who are feeling like, oh, absolutely, that's a terrible idea. 50% of you who are thinking, oh, yeah, that's really true. A lot of our investment is just sort of keeping everything that you have up and running. So streamlining is an investment in efficiency. A lot of times it doesn't seem like it, but it really, really is, right? Now, it sounds easy. And of course, this is one of those things that's like, oh, I'm just going to push the streamline button and it's just magically going to happen. That's not true, because you're talking about infrastructure change. I mean, if you're going to combine systems into one, if you're going to try to focus on more integrated experiences and more integrated views, you are going to be changing to your infrastructure, and that is tough. They all said, hey, cloud's going to be easy, just lift and shift everything over there, but that's not the way it works when you actually are talking about complex enterprise applications. So making this a focus, like remembering that the value that streamlining can bring is really important, because otherwise it's easy to forget that. You will already know if complexity is one of your largest issues, and you may not be able to necessarily stop buying new technology that is adding complexity, but maybe you can slow walk a little bit of those processes, or maybe you can actually drive real conversation between leadership and the technology team and end users about what your goals are there, to talk in terms of efficiency. Hey, if you will let us sunset this system, we're going to be able to improve performance. We're going to be able to provide easier to use interfaces, like whatever the benefits that you hope to drive, make that part of that conversation. And the other thing is you really have to make sure that you have time for that conversation. Just like security, that's something that tends to get pushed off, but you're going to have to do a lot of research into the technology that you're managing so that you can figure out where there are opportunities to streamline. I would argue that definitely being able to readily discover and map your entire infrastructure is also going to help because, the first candidates for streamlining might be something that's unused. You may have resources that are just sitting out there, they're not doing anything, and you could just turn them off. The other thing is that remember that efficiency loss from toil, from human work at a keyboard or wherever they are, with new technology does not increase linearly. It increases exponentially. And the reason for that is the matrix nature of IT today, right? We are trying to reuse as many services as we can. If you think about microservices, for example, the whole idea that you're going to build this heavily matrix, reused, single-purpose set of services, that is increasing complexity at a rate that we have never seen before. Hybrid, of course, adds a whole lot of new unknowns, including a lot of skills development and investment that can be unexpected. And so you can think about efficiency losses as actually that come from complexity as maybe reducing your competitive advantage. Because again, if efficiency is the way that we win against other commoditized other teams using commoditized infrastructure, right? The complexity can be one of the single biggest killer of not only efficiency, but your ability to transform. Of course, I mean, that is going to require culture change. Again, we're talking about individual people learning to accept that this is part of the way that you compete, that this is part of your business advantage. So you can't expect to just say, oh, we're going to shut off some systems and this is all going to be fine. You're going to need to really socialize that conversation, socialize the changes that you plan to make, and actually build a little bit of tolerance for not exactly disruption, but that in the short term, there may be some compromises. There might be a not high profile, but medium profile deployment that might need to move off a month or two, and make sure that you can help explain why that is, so that when you were talking about prioritization for projects, that you can talk to them about why efficiency is so important, and then why streamlining is such a big part of that. And then the last thing, of course, is that if you see a lot of swivel chair integration, if you see your admin team switching from tool to tool to tool to tool to tool to get their job done, that is a great place for looking for integrated tools that make it a lot easier for them to do their job in one place and be able to resolve issues a lot faster. Another thing that you might want to look at, and I think we all know this, especially if you look at, for example, the Solarwinds user community, some of the conversations there, it seems to be getting a little more difficult every year for teams to find and acquire the skills that they need. And if you think about it, that is having a cumulative effect on efficiency, right? Because every time an admin has to stop, every time they have to figure out how something works, every time they have to do a bunch of research for a new technology or a new skill, that is going to affect their efficiency. And I mean, they really, really don't like that. So if you want to, start with an easy identification of where a little bit of investment in some new skills is, just ask, hey, what are the top 3 areas in our team, in our infrastructure, that you wish that you knew more about? And they will probably give you a list of 30 things, which is kind of handy. And then walk through those and identify common areas where investment in learning would actually help. An easy way to measure that, besides just canvassing them, is look at whether you were able to, based on the job descriptions that you have published, to find resources, to find new employees who can actually deliver those skills. And if you are having a lot of problems, then chances are it's distributed across not just the industry, but your team as well. And a single missing skill might affect actually several engineers. So use that delta between what you're able to find in resumes and what your job requirements are, what your team needs are. Use that gap to determine how much you should probably be investing in skills development. Of course, the other things you're going to be able to do a lot more with those, right? So the more experienced and efficient your team is, you'll have a reduction in errors, and it's a really nice morale boost. I mean, in IT, our job is to essentially learn any new skill necessary and turn that into a productionizable asset. Okay, maybe that's a whole lot of words, but we like to know that we can solve problems. And so when your team is confident, their morale, their excitement, and their eagerness to dive in and solve new challenges also goes up with a corresponding boost on efficiency. Then the last thing is, when you are talking to them about this, is it gives you a chance to include efficiency in the conversation, right? If you're doing education, not even formal education, maybe just having a broad conversation about, hey, we want you to learn new skills, to identify areas where they should invest, you can make efficiency the bedrock of that conversation. You can introduce the topic of efficiency itself as part of their education to help to get the entire team thinking about operating efficiently. And of course, then you are thinking about a new culture instead of it just being an overlay. I mean, I made the joke before that it might just be called efficiency ops. Of course, that is really silly because, you ops all the things. But the thing is, I mean, it's just to remember that this really isn't about platforms and tools. I mean, that's easy to say. But, that first efficiency boost is human, right? It's really understanding the plight of IT. And in the end, your team might be a lot more eager to embrace a more with less attitude if they understand that that really is their ongoing competitive business advantage, right? That is what your team can offer that differentiates from everyone else. And so it's not about being commoditized, and it's not about being a cog in a tightly managed budget team, but instead it goes to the heart of who we are as IT, who we are as administrators, who we are as managers, who we are as leaders, whatever our role is in IT. Because if you think about it, we're tweakers. We are race car crew chiefs, right? And we compete based on a million hard-won secrets to get the most performance out of a given infrastructure, right? And can we beat the other team by the skills that we have and that we bring to that race? That is what we do. And we essentially engineer efficiency every day, whether we know it or not. Okay, so a couple final thoughts, and then we'll take some questions. So please remember, if you take one thing away, is that overlay tools will only boost efficiency so far. And instead, efficiency has to be built in to all of the processes and as many of the tools as possible that your team is using every day, or you're not going to get the full benefit from it. Your goal is not to occasionally be efficient. You don't burst to efficiency. You are not going to have somebody come in and audit your efficiency and provide recommendations. And again, this is something where you're going to win that race every day. The decisions that you make day in and day out, it's not a grand process that will get you there. But the other thing is you can do it. Increasingly, there are a ton of great examples with details. There's a lot of support out there that can help you use your tools more effectively. And there are best practices that are really can be shared. And also you might talk to your peers outside your organization and find out what they're doing. It is going to require you to change your focus a little bit. And it is going to require you to work at an individual level to really evangelize the importance of efficiency. But the upfront cost is usually low, and the return later can be huge. That's about all I got. I'd love to take some questions.
Absolutely, yeah. Really great presentation. While we do some Q&A, I'm just going to bring up this slide. It says, what additional information would you like about the SolarWinds solution? So let's see. First question that came in here, they're asking is there a risk to intra-station expansion or upgrade budgets if you actually show your management you can do more with less? I.e., would you be proving you don't need anything? What's your take on that?
Oh, yeah. Well, this is sort of the you can automate yourself out of the job concern. And it totally makes sense, right? If you really appreciate the fact that you are working in a cost center and you can deliver more with less, why should the business reward you with more or even the same, right? The idea is, hey, if you don't need it, we can save this and use it somewhere else. And that's going back to, again, being able to make sure that you have reports that show that as money goes in, performance and operations improve, because that goes back to that ROI calculation, being able to say, hey, you're investing and here's the results that are based on that. They will double down or at least be more likely to protect that investment in the long run.
Okay, very nice. Another question, what are some areas that specific teams should think about when it comes to efficiency? You know, if you're in networking or applications or DBA or support.
Yeah, we talked about a couple of those there. I mean, obviously, service desk can be a huge advantage. But like the basics for networking teams, that's going to be change automation. That's going to be things like tools that can make it easy to diagnose network, sort of how networks are actually used from an application perspective, especially that can show how application traffic is changing dynamically as it's moving from system to system, or you're horizontally scaled in cloud. For backups, again, I mean, a lot of that comes down to there isn't, one backup for everyone. You may want to have high-frequency backups deployed to multiple locations for critical systems, but other systems maybe only occasionally backed up. So tools that can make it easy to provide more granular control for backups can be huge. Application management, just the discovery and even basics like change detection for systems, right? Like if you're troubleshooting, one of the big troubleshooting, time wasters is combing through logs for days and days for this one needle in the haystack. And if you don't have a common logging framework, that can be a problem. Being able to do change detection and decide, to be able to determine, hey, performance was fine, users were happy, and all of a sudden they fell off. If you can correlate that change to the moment in which the trouble appeared, being able to find the root cause and remediate it quickly, that's going to increase.
Great real-world advice, Patrick. Yeah. I love the real-world advice. Really great presentation. I love the energy as well. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
You bet, and thanks so much for having us.
For more information on SolarWinds, check out their website. Of course, check out the handout that's also available for download there in your audience console. It's called Monitor All the Things, Physical, Virtual, IaaS, and PaaS. It's all about monitoring. Make sure that you check that one out. It's now time for our next prize giveaway. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Bruce Pena from North Carolina, and third grand prize going to Ethan Blackstone of Tennessee. Congratulations. I will post those winners in the chat. And now I'm excited to introduce our next presenter on today's Megacast. That is Caroline Seymour, Vice President of Product Marketing at Zerto. Caroline, are you there?
I am indeed. Thank you.
Thank you for being on. Take it away.
Will do. And so yes, what I'd like to talk to you today about is how Zerto can really help you drive new efficiencies within your IT organization with an IT resilience platform. And it's very sort of important, especially with today's sort of situation where potentially too around the pandemic that we're seeing with the coronavirus. The need to be able to drive those new efficiencies and to be able to protect and also to continue that transformation and innovation of your business, but at the same time reduce the complexity, costs, and also the overall TCO. So as you look at what we do, first of all, and then we'll take a step back, is the fact that what we do is we actually converge cloud mobility, disaster recovery, and backup in a single IT resilience platform. And we do that because as we look at what we see in talking with our customers is that there are many in fact, imperatives that IT is challenged with. If we look at the first one, for example, moving to cloud, companies are looking for ways to take advantage of the cloud so that they can innovate faster. And if you think about becoming digital, you really need to be thinking about deploying one or more cloud infrastructure architectures to help you do that. There are new levels of security that are required to deal with the new security threats and risks that we see every day, and specifically as we look at the ransomware and cybersecurity. Obviously, there is that need for that addressing of the ongoing compliance and regulatory requirements of an organization. Data volumes, when you think about it, are growing exponentially. I'm sure you're all seeing that across whether it's from the edge, the core, or the cloud. And so managing that data and taking advantage of it is absolutely critical. And then as we know that, the technology landscape itself continues to evolve, and IT really needs to take advantage of what's new and what's available and what's right for the business. And as we look at that, and as you think about doing all of that, IT has to ensure in the fact that they're looking at the expectations from the customers, and that's about no downtime, no data loss, and that effectively you need to ensure that you can deliver a 24/7 business. And when we look at delivering a 24/7 business, we have to think about the disruptions to your business. And it's every single disruption to the business has to be managed. And we know that disruptions are happening every day, and we're seeing a significant one right now. And if we take a closer look at, what we talk about disruptions, I look at it in the fact that there are bad disruptions and good disruptions. And so you have the unplanned, as you can see here, and the planned. And so the unplanned are things like, the what-ifs, the disruptions that happen, say, when a disaster strikes, such as a natural disaster, or perhaps it's a ransomware, which can actually bring down your complete business. But then there are more sort of, just the operational type of disruptions that is caused when, say, a user is deleting has deleted a critical file, I should say, or that you need to perhaps have recover from a corrupted database. And so you need to recover those sort of things. They're more operational recovery. Then you actually have things like there are legal requirements that you need to be able to store for long-term retention for compliance, but you may need to recover files from further back in time. So all of these unplanned disruptions are the things that really are a drain on your staff, your time, and your budget. And so handling these unplanned outages need to be simple and automated, and they need to be able to, cover 100% of the business requirements whilst actually minimizing the resources and processes. And therefore, you really need to drive more efficiency into how do you manage for these unplanned? How do you automate the manual processes around that and alleviate the strain on your IT organization? Then when you actually look on the right-hand side of this, you have the planned disruptions, and these are things that we call the good disruptions. Because at the end of the day, IT, despite the fact that all of the things that you're looking on the left-hand side, that are the things that keep us really, really busy, you want to be looking at and evaluating and integrating new technologies into your operations. And you want to keep pace with the expectations of the business and also still to reduce significant costs. Now, all of these business driving initiatives that you see here on the right-hand side, things like, migrations, whether that's migrating to the cloud or testing new software for your environment, data center consolidations, maybe you're actually sort of removing a data center and moving that to cloud. There are many different things that you're doing that are good things for the business, good initiatives. But unfortunately, these can also be very, very disruptive. And so you need to be able to react, again, more efficiently to these unplanned so that you have more time. The planned, you need to be able to react more efficiently to the planned so that you can actually alleviate and align your resources that you would have been using for those disasters that you may actually have, that you can move those resources to focus on the planned disruptions, those things that drive innovation and business value. So, and as we look at the challenges and historically what's actually happened is the fact that to tackle these specific problems, these unplanned and planned, companies are using separate siloed tools and solutions, which not only adds complexity to manage, but it is costly. So you have separate disaster recovery replication tools, you have backup, you actually have tools for migration, tools for orchestration. And so what we see happening is a convergence of tools. And our answer to that is our IT resilience platform that converges that disaster recovery capability, the backup capabilities, the cloud mobility capabilities into a single platform. And that's our IT resilience platform. And that's there to reduce the complexities of multiple solutions, reduce overall IT costs, and to drive more efficiencies within your organization itself. Now, our platform is based on a foundation of continuous data protection, converging the functions of disaster recovery, of operational recovery, long-term retention, hybrid, multi-cloud mobility, as well as also those operational services. And it's software only. We've also built in orchestration and automation, so you don't need a separate orchestration tool. It's built into the platform so you can automate all of the manual processes so that you can really start to think about how you can align your resources to better focus on what's driving the business forward, so those plan-type disruptions. We've also added into the platform is our analytics, built-in analytics with out-of-the-box dashboards and reports that provide complete visibility across your multi-site, multi-cloud environment, so that you can be comfortable that your business SLAs are being met. And then as a software-only platform, it's storage and hardware agnostic. But we also have deep integration into the vendors that you see here to ensure what's strategic to your business is also strategic with the integrations that we make, and that we have the deepest and tightest relationship and integrations. And when you think about the Zerto difference, I just want to focus on what I think is the 4 key things that make us stand out and the advantages that we can help in your organization that will help drive new efficiencies. First, it's our best-of-breed hypervisor-based replication. It's native and it's agentless, and that helps to ensure you have continuous availability of your business, so delivering that 24/7. Second, we have a unique journaling capability, or rather technology, that ensures that you can recover and resume from any point in time, from seconds to years. And then if I think about it, we talk about recovery of data, but it's not just about your data. It's also about recovering your applications, and you want to ensure that your applications are moved or recovered as a single entity. So really, it's about the application consistency as well. And then lastly, it's also about the simplicity, and it's been a core tenet of ours, and simplicity is at the core of everything that we do. Simplicity of deployment, simplicity of ease of use, with the built-in orchestration and automation, the built-in analytics. But let's take a closer look at each one of these. If I think about the replication, for example, we really did revolutionize and simplified replication back in 2009 when we moved it up into the hypervisor level. And we also then included that automation and orchestration in one platform. And so what that enables you to do is replace everything you were trying to do before with multiple tools in all-in-one simple-to-use software-only platform. It also removes the lock-in to any hardware and storage. And so this hypervisor-based replication removes any impact to production and removes the need for scheduling, and there are no snapshots or agents. And so what it ensures with the hypervisor-based replication is that you're always protected. And here, this really shows a little bit of the architecture of what this actually looks like. And so Zerto utilizes a scale-out architecture that ensures your enterprise-class protection of your environment, no matter the size, whether it's a small deployment or a large deployment. And virtual VRAs have also a built-in WAN optimization and quality of service to replicate every change that is being generated in real time. The Zerto Virtual Manager, for example, integrates with the hypervisor management platform of your choice, and the Zerto Manager has a very intuitive and easy-to-use interface that orchestrates the operations initiated by the users with simplicity. I think I just had another build there that I didn't realize. And then besides, supporting, every individual platform, as we actually look at whether it's VMware or Hyper-V, we support all of these cloud platforms too, so that you can do your replication and failover and mobility to, from, and between all of them, offering a real true multi-cloud architecture. And we see many organizations today, but perhaps starting with one cloud, and now they're actually moving to another, because we know in the fact that not all workloads are equal and work on the same cloud in the same way. And so you see the architecture on the production side here is exactly the same as if you were replicating to another VMware or Hyper-V site. And the source site has just the Zerto Cloud appliance. That's what we have, and it's again software only, which manages the replication to Azure. And what it does is to continuously replicate to blob storage in Azure. And no VMs are actually built until there is actual failover requirement. The replica disks are also stored in page blobs, and the journal data is stored in block blobs. And so that's with Azure, and then for AWS, for example, Zerto will continuously replicate to S3, for example, storage. And again, no VMs are built until there is actual failover. And so this has exactly the same experience across all of the platforms, whether you're on-premises or cloud. One interface, one experience. And the other key thing here that's really powerful is that you can simultaneously replicate your virtual machines within the same data center to a remote data center and to Azure or AWS. And so what we're seeing is many organizations are using Zerto to leverage cloud as a DR site. It really is probably the easiest ways of leveraging cloud and making that first move to cloud. And of course, that helps with your modernization and requirements and removing the need from a physical real estate cost that you would have for a DR site, which drives more efficiencies within your organization. And so, if we actually take a look at the journal itself, and what's so critical here is the fact that you can see that there are a series of checkpoints in time. So you set these up and you can configure these by default. They're every 5 seconds. And then so, for example, here, if a disaster hits like ransomware or, say, a file is deleted at 10 a.m., with the Zerto journal, you can actually recover to within 5 seconds of when that disaster struck. Or say that a file was deleted. It didn't have to be ransomware, but a file was deleted. So the point is there's very, very little or zero data loss. And if you look here, I put the example on here because if you're looking at a traditional recovery solution like snapshots or backups, you have to actually resort to your last backup or snapshot. So if your snapshot was, say, at 6 a.m., then you lose up to 4 hours of data. And if your backup was, say, at 10 a.m. the previous day, that's a potential of 24 hours of data loss. So these are considerations that you need to be thinking about. And I put an example here of Tenkata Protective Fabrics. They're a billion-dollar textile company, and they were attacked. They were attacked by a CryptoLocker virus, and they had backup to tape, and an entire file server at a manufacturing facility was impacted. And basically, as you see here, it took 2 weeks in total recovery because they couldn't restore from backups. They then had to get to tape, and they had approximately about a 12-hour data loss. So that's pretty significant. They deployed Zerto for their new DR solution, and a little while later, after they had deployed Zerto, they were attacked again by a very similar, but it was a more advanced strain of CryptoLocker. And as you can see here, a number of directories and a server at a manufacturing facility were impacted. And what you see actually here is the fact that there was less than a 10-second data loss that they had, and they were able to recover within 10 minutes. That's a pretty powerful story, driving new efficiencies within your organization and making sure that you're protected in situations like this. Now, reality is when you have sort of a ransomware or somebody deletes a file, you probably the need for data recovery is required within, say, a 14-day period or maybe a bit longer. But as we know, data needs to be restored for longer because of compliance, I should say. And there are sometimes these requirements, you may need to recover a file that is being held maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year ago for whatever reason. And so we introduced a concept in our Asset Journal that really combines the short-term journaling technology that we have with long-term repositories that allow you to be able to, recover from not only the short-term but also the long-term. And so the important thing here too is that we allow you to be able to recover whether it could be an entire virtualized data center, a specific site, a full application, specific VMs, or even granular files. So you're not subject to a specific format. You can recover to what you need to recover. But what I also want to highlight, and I mentioned this before, is I want to talk a little bit about the applications, because it's not only just about recovering your data. Enterprise applications, as you know, are very complex. And so you need to protect your VMs within that application as a cohesive, logical entity. And so what does that mean? That way, you avoid the inconsistent recovery of multi-VM applications, I should say. And so when you're creating recovery points, all of the VMs will share exactly the same recovery point, so that when the application is recovered, every VM that contains the application spins up at that same cross-application recovery point. And so all of this is guaranteed no matter where the VMs are located within your infrastructure. And so what this does is to allow you to really replicate and also recover your complex multi-VM applications as that one cohesive unit to the exact same point in time. And so this really does save you tons of resources when you're trying to reduce the amount of time dedicated to recovery. And that's a significant efficiency saving that you will gain. And so, let me just move on here. I mentioned the fourth key element, which was around simplicity. And simplicity is at the core of everything that we do, from whether it's installation to deployment to ease of use and management. And typically an install it takes an hour, and you can be up and running within half a day at the very, very most with Zerto and be replicating VMs. So if you want a quick install, Zerto is your solution. And Zerto also provides one interface, as I mentioned before, and one experience across your on-premises as well as also your cloud, so that you can simply manage, your recovery, you manage your migrations, and all of the other use cases that you saw earlier. Orchestration and automation, as I mentioned before, has been built into the platform so that you can automate those manual processes. So all the things that are huge drain on your resource, your IT resources, the IT staff, as they're trying to manage their DR and operational recovery and long-term retention requirements. And so what we've also done is to deliver out-of-the-box analytic capabilities and reporting to provide full visibility and control of all of your protected environments, whether that's on-premises or within the cloud. And so if we look at the analytics for a moment, we actually think about the fact that you can now look at and analyze what's in the past. You can monitor the present to ensure your SLAs have been met, but you can also now plan for the future. We added capability to ensure that you can actually forecast the resource requirements that you need for whether it's on-premise deployment or whether in the cloud deployment. I also want to highlight here quickly the mobile. It's interesting because I've been to several events and I talk to customers all the time, and many customers come up to me and say, oh, look at this, and they bring out their mobile phone and show me their environment. And so as they're at the event, they actually can see that everything is working in the way that they expect it to be worked, and there's no problem. And that gives you tremendous peace of mind. And this, as we look at all from working from home due to the current situation, is a key factor, because you can drive this from anywhere. The other key thing too around the analytics is the compliance reporting that we actually have, and you see a sample here of the compliance reports, because I think everybody needs to be looking at and thinking about, can I test for my disaster recovery scenario? How often do you test? And quite often most companies have some level of compliance requirement that they have to deliver to their auditors around compliance testing, and I think this will become more and more as things evolve. And so we provide that ability to easily test. It's not a matter of every 6 months. You can test every week if need be, and to deliver these audit type of reports for compliance requirements. And as I mentioned, if you're an existing customer or whether you are a new customer and you're looking at Zerto, we can very, very quickly help you from a resource planning requirement. So the resource planner can allow you to look at the resources that you would actually need from a compute, storage, and networking, as well as also things like your journal size and so forth. And so this can really help you to and facilitate your cloud adoption. And so as we look at it, you can see that we have one platform. This is one platform for disaster recovery, operational recovery, long-term retention, multi-hybrid cloud, as well as operational services. So it reduces the complexity of having multiple tools. It reduces the costs of having multiple tools as well. And so you can do more with less with Zerto. And you can see I put the different use cases here on the slide as well. And so I put some examples of some customers that are using Zerto today and the ROI that they are seeing through our solution. So for example, and we've got customers that are large and small that use Zerto across many different industries, whether that's from disaster recovery, operational recovery, the long-term data retention, high cloud, as well as the operational services. So if we take a couple of examples, you can see that HCA adopted Zerto. They actually, they looked to use Zerto to replace the 4 DR solutions. They had 4. They wanted to consolidate those down, and you can see the significant cost savings that they had by actually doing that. The other key one, and I mentioned this before, was the fact of eliminating your physical data center. And you can see BJ's here that actually leveraged cloud, and you can see the significant savings too that they received over 3 years by leveraging public cloud. And so you can see the many different types of customers that you can see here. I like the one also in the fact that XPO Logistics, they had an aggressive mergers and M&A strategy. And so that required them to consolidate their data centers from 21 to 6, and they achieved that in 36 months. And you can see also the efficiencies, the operational efficiencies that Starbucks has today, as well as also with United Airlines and around their application that they're protecting, which is their online reservation application. So in summary, if we take a look at just, why Zerto itself, the business outcomes that are delivered from our platform, are threefold really. One, it's about delivering that continuous availability, and everybody's concerned about that today. The need to be able to continue business, deliver that 24/7. So you can protect with Zerto against any disruption and make that automated as well. And so whether you're looking at your planned or unplanned, we can help you deliver an always-on customer experience. The operational efficiency alone with what we do by solving the disaster recovery, the operational recovery, and all of those functions that we talked about. And so now all of these can be done in one platform, and you no need to actually deliver or need multiple tools. And that drives incredible new efficiencies within your organization. And then lastly, too, is the fact that you have the ability to be able to leverage cloud very, very quickly, delivering that multi-cloud agility, and with no vendor lock-in too. And I'll just leave you with the fact that a little bit about Zerto and who we are. And our vision overall and everything that we do and focus on is about being able to deliver an uninterrupted world for all of the technology business and business users and consumers. We've been around since 2009, and we now have over 8,000 customers across all industries, and those range from the Fortune 10 right down to small businesses as well. And we have over 1,500 business partners, including partners like Microsoft and HPE and VMware and so forth, as well as also 450 plus service providers. And I just want to also, there is a document on the resources or the handouts that shows you this infographic. And we'll be sending out this report as well, the Forrester TI report, which shows the value that organizations are deriving from the Zerto IT Resilience platform. So we will, and you can find that on Zerto.com. Very lastly, we actually have an event coming up in May, the end of May, and we have a special promotion code here for you. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope that you found this information useful and that we can help you solve your requirements as it relates to driving continuous availability for your business.
Great presentation. Thank you so much, Caroline. We do have some questions here for you. While we do that, I'm just going to bring up this poll question that says, what additional information would you like about the Zerto solution? So let's see, first question that came in here, they're asking about licensing. What's the Zerto licensing model like?
Yeah, we have two ways. One is the fact that you can do subscription licensing, and you can do perpetual too. And I can't mention you about the platform and all the capabilities in one platform, so it's one platform, one SKU. We don't charge for, the analytics piece, or we don't charge for the orchestration piece. It's all part and parcel. So, and that includes also the cloud components that if you're migrating, say, or moving workloads to AWS or Azure, it's one license, one cost. So it's a very simple licensing policy that we have.
Very nice. I like that. And then how long does it take to get Zerto up and running?
I would say you can actually, I've seen customers deploy within an hour and deploy the Zerto Manager into their vCenter environment and be looking at the VMs and be replicating within 2 or 3 hours. That's obviously, as a start, but it is as simple as that. And I think it's always been very, very impressive. And you look at any reviews that you see from any review site on Zerto, and you will see in the fact that simplicity and ease of deployment is one of the key factors that customers love about Zerto. So it really is, deployed within an hour, you can be up and running and replicating within a couple of hours.
Excellent. And then once you have it up and running, I'm curious, how often are you able to run disaster recovery or data recovery tests with Zerto?
Well, we have customers running on a weekly basis. It depends what the requirements that you actually have. I think this has always been the fear factor when we ask, prospects about, how they're doing with disaster recovery tests, and some are saying never, and some say every 6 months. And there is a real need to, I think, do it far more often. So with the way that we solve for disaster recovery with our replication and then combine that with the journal, you could be doing that every week if you needed to in a very fast time frame.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for Q&A, but there are some more technical questions I saved there for you in the queue. Thank you so much for being on the event today, Caroline.
Appreciate it, and thank you for having me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. For more information on Zerto, of course, visit Zerto.com. Check out the handout that's available there for download in your audience console and give the solution a try for yourself. And now it's time for our next prize drawing. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Jeff Hodge from Texas. Congratulations. And our next grand prize is going to Matt Tront from Pennsylvania. Congratulations. We've got 2 more gift cards, 3 more grand prizes still to give away, so make sure you stay tuned. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our next presenter on today's Megacast. That is Mr. Dave Demlow, Vice President of Product Management at Scale Computing. Dave, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. Thanks for being on, Dave. Take it away.
Perfect. Yep. Thanks a lot, David. Hello, everyone. Thanks for your time this afternoon or evening, wherever you happen to be. I'm with Scale Computing. I'm the Vice President of Product Management. We're going to talk about IT efficiency in distributed data centers, centralized data centers, edge computing, and hyperconvergence, and give you some background on Scale. If I can keep on schedule with the slides, we'll even do a little quick live product demo to show some of the efficiency that we can offer in our platform through great simplicity and automation. So some background on Scale Computing. We're one of the leaders in modern virtualization. We develop hyperconverged solutions, edge computing solutions for distributed enterprise, small and mid-market IT shops. We've been kind of widely acknowledged as a leader in the SMB, small and mid-sized business infrastructure market with unique technology patents that really allow us to simplify and provide autonomous, self-running, self-healing IT operations. Kind of on the software side, our DNA that makes us unique is radically simplified management, a lot of that through automation, through built-in intelligence, and then solutions that are designed inherently to provide high availability, that are designed to keep applications, whether they're legacy systems, new cloud-native applications up and running with a lot of simplicity. We wrap that with very comprehensive support. Generally, our products are delivered as an appliance, but we do have, as I'll go through later, some OEM partners. Actually, several of them are mentioned here on the slide. But in all those cases, a very comprehensive support experience, one company to call up Scale, and even if it is partner hardware that may need to be replaced or so forth, we provide a comprehensive solution for the entire software and hardware stack, including things like patching and updates and so forth. We sell solutions across a wide range of industry. Some of the main ones that we see a lot of need for our type of solutions would be in healthcare, particularly with multi-location retail locations, quick-serve restaurants, hospitality, things like that, where there are critical applications there required to provide service to walk-up customers and keep transactions flowing, but not IT staff. So the need for resiliency and so forth. Healthcare, education, financial services. We're headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. Our software engineering team is out in San Francisco, and we've been doing this for quite a while. There's over 3,000 HC3 clusters deployed. We maintain a very high customer satisfaction rating of a 91 Net Promoter Score. So diving into the solution, again, I mentioned really the key to our ease of use and to the efficiency that we provide on the operational standpoint is that self-healing infrastructure. So we provide automation that keeps the entire solution stack. So we include the virtualization layer, the obviously compute resources in the server hardware, integrated storage, so the software-defined storage, networking, hyperconvergence. The hypervisor is built in and included. There's no separate VMware or other hypervisor license to provide or install or patch. It's all built in. And then we do provide capabilities such as built-in disaster recovery, backup functionality in the box, as well as being able to complement that with partners. So that results in an extremely cost-efficient, easy-to-manage solution. And we'll get into quite a bit throughout this presentation, some of the design choices we made in that results in our software providing a very lightweight, flexible footprint, which means we can run on very, very small form factor devices. As a matter of fact, one of the demonstration we'll do is on one of our newest HE150 entry-level edge computing product lines. And show the kinds of workloads you can provide on very, very cost-efficient, low-powered systems. So looking at IT, the two biggest issues are managing downtime and preventing downtime, keeping things up and running, and then the people costs that go beyond that. And simplifying infrastructure is really the only way to address that. The more moving parts that you have, the more things you have, that are potential failure points in your operations, more things to maintain, more things to, test and verify interoperability as you do expansions and upgrades. Beyond those types of things, to just the attack surface, the more things you have to protect and manage, more opportunities for viruses, ransomware, other security attacks to penetrate. more things to be concerned about from a backup and operational standpoint, and then on the people side, more things to be trained on, to have to worry about deployment, to maintain, and so forth. So our goal with an integrated solution stack is to simplify all of that. So again, we are a hyperconverged infrastructure, meaning that our solutions address both the computing needs and storage needs in a fully integrated solution. We provide unified management. There's one console that manages the entire infrastructure, whether that's a single system or in most cases a cluster of systems that are operating together. All the storage is pre-configured. They can deploy an entire system in well under an hour, and that includes a full high availability configuration that gives you self-healing capabilities, integrated backup capability, the ability to do off-site disaster recovery as a service, and also in a scalable platform. So this isn't something that you need to buy, consume, and then do periodic forklift upgrades. You can scale out from a single node. You can scale out an existing cluster of older nodes by adding newer nodes with new capabilities, new capacity. And it's a very affordable solution as well because it's a single vendor. All the software you need is included, preloaded, pre-configured. There's no separate software to buy or license. We generally provide a much lower cost both on the initial upfront purchase, on additional scale out, as well as the ongoing management. So for kind of a reviewer, what is hyperconvergence? It basically is integrating compute that you generally provide buy on the servers from vendor A, storage that you might have bought on a SAN or NAS system from vendor B, hypervisor software that you might load and configure to access that shared storage for high availability from vendor C, providing that and putting that all into a single solution. The alternative is this kind of classic 3-2-1 that says modern. I would actually call this legacy virtualization infrastructure where you've got multiple hosts connecting through a storage fabric to some type of shared storage system. The first wave of hyperconverged system basically took that same architecture and took the storage and tried to place it into virtual machines. As we'll show on this upcoming slide, we took a different approach. We actually re-architected the entire system, embedded our storage management and infrastructure management capability right into the hypervisor that runs on the bare metal, providing a much more efficient architecture, and we'll do some examples here. But the scale hypercore operating system that's preloaded on these appliances generally reserves less than 4 gigabytes of RAM, and in smaller controlled use cases can actually go under a gigabyte of RAM, leaving a large amount of system resources available to applications. And the same is true when you look at CPU overhead and things like that. So we were really designed early on to make full use of hardware, provide that to applications, and do it in a very architecturally efficient way. So kind of looking at it in more detail, say you were buying a server that had 64 gig of RAM and you wanted to run multiple applications on that, or maybe these were a cluster of systems that you wanted to buy. Traditional systems, by the time you load a hypervisor, maybe load a software-defined storage stack, you might have consumed 24 gig out of that 64 gig of RAM out of the infrastructure. Let's see this one here. So when you look at the amount of workloads that you might be able to run on that, it's going to be a much smaller amount. And then if you tried to do that on an even smaller system, very quickly you're going to run into a point where it's just not worth it. A 32 gig compute system that would be very, very cost effective is not going to leave much a resource available for applications. Compare that to the Scale HC3 operating system, where we can consume, as I mentioned, anywhere from 4 gig to as little as 1 gig of RAM. You could do a lot more work on any of those nodes, and when you get into some of these smaller, very cost-effective form factor systems that you might see deployed, for example, in a retail store, the cost savings of being able to economize and run infrastructure applications on these much lower cost systems multiplies quite a bit. And this continues. So we actually productize systems that are available for commercial deployment with as little as 8 gigabytes of RAM, and in those configurations, they're still able to provide high availability, central manageability, all the benefits that the larger systems provide in a footprint and at a cost point that our competitors just would not be able to touch from a hardware standpoint. Some of the other things, as I mentioned, we include our integrated backup and disaster recovery strategy. So there's a number of aspects that are included out of the box, from snapshots, instance of application consistent snapshots that can be scheduled through the HC3 user interface, things like snapshot retention managed automatically, and the ability to do integrated remote replication. So those same snapshot schedules can apply to locally managed snapshots as well as optionally remotely scheduled snapshots, and all the types of things you would do with backup scheduling. For example, if I wanted to take snapshots every 15 minutes to provide recovery from, say, a ransomware attack, and I want to keep those for a period of several hours, that can be scheduled easily within the HC3 system. And by the way, our storage layer was designed to actually allow a very large number of snapshots, well over 5,000 snapshots per virtual machine in our architecture. So keeping snapshots, taking frequent snapshots, and because of the integrated snapshot retention management, there's a lot of flexibility that you have right out of the box within the product. We also do partner with third-party backup solutions. One of our strongest partnerships, and actually a solution that we offer, is Acronis. And Acronis we're actually working with very shortly to offer agentless backups, so they'll be able to natively do API integration with the HC3 software to back up without the requirement of agents. However, today, most customers actually do prefer to use their agents because they do provide a lot of additional functionality, loading the backup agent, for example, ransomware protection that uses AI-type capabilities to detect anomalies in I/O patterns, and for example, if a data blocks automatically start being encrypted, their in-guest agent has the ability to detect that and actually track the changes and undo those changes right within their strategy, within their agent. So those capabilities often do push customers to be interested in utilizing third-party backups as well. So this is a view of our entire product line. So we do offer a wide range of solutions, everything from smaller edge deployments where you might just need a few applications running. We're going to actually do a demonstration here on our new HE150 system, which is the little cube type system on the left. It's about a 4-inch by 4-inch square, and you can cluster those together to provide a high availability configuration with a MSRP starting point for a cluster at around $5,000, including hardware, software, and support. And then we go up to, data center, class, core, 2U, high capacity, high storage, high compute resource nodes, and then also offer hybrid cloud solutions. Right from scale, you can purchase our HC3 Cloud Unity solution, which bridges the HC3 infrastructure out to public cloud resources, whether it's for disaster recovery as a service is the most common use case. Those can all be purchased directly from scale and are all part of the overall solution that we offer. So as I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and switch and do a quick demo of our HC3 system here. And let me share. So the entire system is managed from a web-based user interface. So this is actually one of our HE150 systems here. As you can see, this particular model has 16 gigabytes of RAM per node. These three systems were simply plugged into the network, given IP addresses. They cluster themselves together as a pool of compute and storage resources, and then applications can be deployed, whether they're virtual machine applications, whether they're container-based applications. I'm going to go here and spin up a Windows workload that will start doing some additional I/O. This particular 3-node configuration actually has just a single NVMe storage device, and this is one of the entry-level lower capacity models that's available. But all of the data that's created by these virtual machines is striped redundantly across all three of these systems, so that if one of them fails, there's multiple copies of data. The applications running would simply fail over to the remaining nodes. The data would still continue to be available, and these applications would continue running without any operator intervention required, and also without it being a fire drill where somebody needs to get out and roll a truck in within 4 hours and send IT resources on site to provide that type of thing. If this is a central data center configuration, you might deploy applications manually, creating a new virtual machine. You can either import it from a virtual appliance file or an offline VM, or create a new virtual machine. It's as simple as a couple of clicks, choosing what image you want to install from and going. We also do offer full API compatibility. So, for example, if I want to do PowerShell scripting or run Ansible playbooks to be able to rapidly provision new resources, that's available within the platform as well itself. And as I mentioned, things like instant data replication are available. If I wanted to take, let me just pick one of these virtual machines and set it up to be replicated, I can simply click here, set up replication. If I've already connected to a target system, in this case I have, I can pick that particular target system, pick replicate, and that will immediately begin continuous replication to that system. I can also go in and, if I want, set schedules to be able to control things like snapshot retention. Like say, for example, I want hourly and I want to keep 3 snapshots. That's a simple setup. Do hourly every 1 hour, and we'll keep snapshots, we'll say, for 12 hours. And create a rule that I can then apply to any virtual machine for either local or remote snapshots for that particular system. So this is just a quick demo. I want to show just how easy the platform is. It's designed to be, let you not have to worry about the underlying infrastructure and just worry about your applications, take care of any failures, whether they're at the compute level or the storage level or the network level, and keep your applications up and running. We do offer weekly demonstrations. I would encourage you to sign up for one of those if you'd like to get more information. And they can do a deep dive on a lot of other cluster configurations, much more detail than we can go into in the amount of time that we have here. So more on scale, the product is very highly rated and highly reviewed. If you go to any common review sites, whether it's Spiceworks, TrustRadius, Gartner Peer Insights, Tech Validate, we have 5-star reviews across all of those platforms, and definitely encourage you to find a user that's like your vertical industry, your use case, see what customers have to say, and of course we're always able to provide references. And if you actually look at on those particular sites how we stack up against many of our direct competitors in that space, very, very favorable given the complete appliance-based solution, one company to call, one throat to choke, one back to pat type of experience really goes a long way in terms of customer satisfaction. We've won a lot of awards. Recently, we're selected by end users as the #1 virtualization solution across all customer segments by Tech Validate. TrustRadius in that case, and also selected by our channel partners. We have a very strong partners for solution providers, managed service providers, resellers, and so forth that also leverage the simplicity and the fact that they can offer this solution, this infrastructure platform to their customers, and know that they're not going to have to wake up in the middle of the night to address a fire drill. That if there's common failures in the compute or storage layer, the system is designed to automatically self-heal, keep the applications up and running, and save them cost of labor. We are available both through a variety of reseller channels and also through partners. For example, we do have a number of OEM providers. So Lenovo is one of our strong partners. We actually leverage Lenovo gear in many of our appliance-based platforms, but it's also available to purchase as a turnkey, fully pre-integrated system directly from Lenovo and their data center solutions configurator. Even in that case, you'll order from Lenovo, get the system come, preloaded, all the software ready to go, just power it up, cable it, and give it IP addresses and go. But you can still contact Scale Computing directly for support on those to get that good one throat to choke experience. We also partner with companies like NEC, and then in some specialized cases like BCD Video is our partner in the video surveillance and security space. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining. And David, do we have questions from the audience?
Absolutely, yeah, we do. A great presentation, Dave. I love the live demo. While we do some Q&A, let's bring up this poll question. It just says, what additional information would you like about the Scale Computing solution? So let's see, first question that came in, they're asking about why did you go with KVM for your hypervisor?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a great question. Well, probably, I mean, first and foremost, it's free, so we didn't, we're able to provide a solution that didn't have additional licensing costs, so forth. Second, it also is very, very well battle tested. It's used in, a number of very, very large public cloud deployments, as well community supported. So, it was basically the obvious choice for us to select. It also, because it was being open source and having standard interfaces, is actually the reason that we were able to plug our storage layer directly into the hypervisor, as opposed to being limited to presenting storage using network storage protocols, using what's called a virtual storage appliance or a controller VM, where we would have to run the storage software stack basically as a software SAN inside a virtual machine, serve up data storage using either NFS or iSCSI protocols, which is, again, very efficient. And that choice is what allowed us to be able to streamline and run on systems with as little as 8 gigabytes of RAM, keep our software overhead very, very low, and still provide a lot of room for application deployment.
Okay, very nice. Another question here, they're asking, do you have any certifications? How do I learn how to manage your products?
Well, that's a good question. We don't have any formal certification. We do offer part of the onboarding process is kind of a, let's walk you through the UI, make sure everything's up and going, that you understand the basics. We obviously also have, resources available and services for that matter that you can purchase from Scale or our partners for larger scale deployments, automated deployments, things like that. But yeah, this is definitely not the kind of solution where you need to go to school for 2 weeks and, pass a bunch of tests to know how to operate. And that's by design. I mean, that's so that, hopefully I conveyed in the demo the amount of simplicity and a little bit longer demo, 15 minutes of walkthrough of all the capabilities. You probably, as the average IT administrator, know almost everything that you would need to know to manage and operate the environment. And then there's a bunch of resources, including online community, obviously, phone support and all the things you'd expect for more advanced needs.
Okay, very nice. I like it. I like easy. Another question, what's the migration process? How do people move to Scale?
Sure. Well, so it's very easy in this day and age to migrate existing. If you have legacy physical machines, virtual machines on other platforms, we offer tools, services that, literally just lift and shift those into the HC3, including even with very little downtime. So often, one of the cases we do find in these, more mission critical environments is scheduling night and weekend downtime or application downtime to be able to just do migration can be a burden. So we do leverage tools that we can provide that offer continuous data replication from wherever your application is running now directly into the HC3 infrastructure. And when you're ready to switch over, it's really at that point just a matter of doing a controlled shutdown, spin up the new VM. It can be 10 to 20 minutes of downtime depending on your application, and you're now cut over and running on the HC3 platform. If you have offline virtual machines, VMDK, OBF files, you can import those as well. So lots of different ways to migrate, but it's a painless process and lots of tools and support to do that.
Very nice. I'm excited about these new Intel NUC, the HE150 models for edge locations and everything. Is there a difference in the user interface when managing those versus the traditional Scale lineup?
No, the user interface. So, I mean, what I demonstrated on there was, was on an HE150, which, that particular model is based on Intel NUC. There are also other small form factor systems that will be coming out in that same family, and there are also for larger scale deployments, that may have specialized need. Maybe they need certain ruggedized characteristics, things like that. There are other offerings that we can make available for those, but the user interface is the same. As a matter of fact, they can replicate back and forth. So a very common configuration would be to have these low cost, very efficient HE150 systems in remote offices, stores, retail, so forth, and then replicate data back to a central location. That's fully supported. We also have a central management console that kind of gives you your single pane of glass view for hundreds or thousands of these clusters deployed in different locations. So we can definitely address a large fleet management type of issue and deployment.
Very nice, very nice. Well, let's see. Well, I think we've covered all the questions that we have time for. I did put some more technical questions for you there in the queue, but
Okay.
really great having you on today, Dave. Really love the demo as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
For more information, visit Scale Computing. Check out the PDF that's available for download there in your audience console as well. It is the executive summary on how Scale Computing is relentlessly simplifying IT infrastructure. So make sure you check that one out. All right, now it's time for our next set of prize winners. We have an Amazon $500 gift card going to Patrick Wright of Texas, and our next grand prize is going to Gabriel Tam of California. That is for another Oculus Rift VR headset, and we have one more gift card and two more grand prizes to give away still after our next and final presentation. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Sahil Bansal, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Nutanix. Take it away.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's great to have you. We look forward to telling you about some of the challenges that we see from a DevOps perspective when it comes to maintaining cloud costs. We look forward to an engaging conversation, so please bring your questions. For those of you who might not be familiar with Nutanix, essentially Nutanix is a hybrid cloud provider where we have our own HCI solution, hyperconverged infrastructure solution. That's what we are known for. That's what our core business is, where our HCI solution is software delivered and it converges compute, storage, and networking layers into one infrastructure platform that is basically can be thought of as your on-premises private cloud platform. But as we've been seeing, the world is increasingly more and more a multi-cloud and hybrid cloud world. When I say multi-cloud, that could be a combination of any kind of multiple clouds. It could be multiple public clouds. It could be on-prem plus public clouds working in isolation. And sometimes people talk about hybrid cloud and multi-cloud in a similar way. But the way we think about hybrid cloud at Nutanix is there is burstability of workloads between on-premises environments and public clouds. So that's just to kind of like set the expectations of what we mean when we talk about multi-cloud or hybrid cloud. And so all of you in this organization are working in IT roles, probably as DevOps engineers, infrastructure operations, architects, and so on. And I'm sure you run into these challenges when you talk about your multi-cloud environment, where at the end of the day, essentially the problem comes, the main source of the problem is lack of control over cloud deployment, especially in public clouds, which can very quickly lead to a sprawling environment, right, which gets out of your hands very quickly unless you have some sort of automation policies built in place. And then even if you are using the native tools that are given by the public cloud provider or by any cloud provider for that matter, they tend to only work in the construct of their own cloud environment. So you have lack of visibility across cloud boundaries unless you have a true multi-cloud solution that can span all of your cloud boundaries, including on-prem and public cloud environments. And of course, with the public cloud world, you also have so many different ways of purchasing resources: on-demand, spot instances, reservation, and then you have to think about which availability zone, which region you should purchase them in, and then you have to also think about all of these different cloud providers, which have probably have different pricing models. So there's a huge amount of purchase planning complexity that goes in. And at the end of the day, what ends up happening is we hear all of the time that engineering teams have been told by their leadership to just move everything to the cloud, right? I'm sure a lot of us relate to that sentence on this call, just move everything to the cloud. But what happens when you move to the cloud without adequate policies in place, governance policies in place, is your costs quickly start to go out of hand. Based on research done by Gartner and other industry-leading analysts, we see that 60% of organizations routinely exceed their cloud budget within the first 12 to 18 months of moving from their data center to a cloud environment. And on an average, the spending overshoot can be as much as 35% of what was budgeted for a especially for a public cloud environment. That's a huge amount of overspend to be, overshooting by 35% within the first couple of years or so of moving to cloud. So what do we do? What is the fundamental problem that's causing these issues? It's because you have your data centers, you have your distributed cloud, you have your edge environments, obviously multiple public clouds are running in different regions, private cloud environments, and as IT leaders, we are trying to run operations and governance policies in siloed environments. That is what leads to there not being any unified control over the entire cloud boundary. And so what is needed, the fundamental need, is to standardize governance and operations across all cloud environments, public and private, using a single solution, instead of trying to rely on point solutions for different cloud environments. What we have seen work out much better is one unified solution that covers your entire environment. And these kind of solutions fall in the category, again, as defined by Gartner, called cloud service expense management tools. We're increasingly starting to see that DevOps teams are taking ownership of cloud service expense management, in addition to obviously the regular development and operations practices that they need to work with. Because at the end of the day, the DevOps teams are the ones that are doing a bulk of the deployment in the cloud, especially in public clouds. And so the onus of making sure that those deployments are optimal and they stay within the company's allocated budget, that ownership we start to see again falls back on the actual engineering teams. And so some of the key capabilities that you need to think about when you're looking at CSCM tools is does it have good RBAC capabilities? Does it allow you to do allocation and tagging for showback purposes? Does it allow you to import your existing discounts? Are you able to forecast your cloud costs at least a few months ahead into the future? Are you able to automatically detect spending anomalies? The tool should be able to detect these spending anomalies across all environments. Is it making good cost optimization recommendations that you can actually act upon? Are you getting reserved instance management practices? And are you able to utilize spot instances effectively? Those are generally the broad categories that we see are relevant when we start to think from the perspective of managing our cloud service expense. And so that's where the Nutanix offering called Xi Beam comes into the picture. It's completely tangential to our HCI offering. So while we do support the Nutanix HCI, we are not dependent on the Nutanix HCI. It is not delivered with our Nutanix HCI stack. It's a completely separate standalone SaaS offering that Nutanix provides in the market, specifically for multi-cloud cost control by providing you three main value drivers through visibility, optimization, and automated control over your cloud spend. And as we'll go through this presentation and a live demo, we'll show you all of the steps that we need to take or that we allow our customers to take that can help them cut their cloud costs, especially public cloud costs, by as much as 50%. So talking about, what does Beam bring to the table? So the first thing is visibility. You cannot control what you cannot see, right? So we help with multi-cloud dashboards that combine all of your cloud spending into one centralized tool. And then you can start from that this multi-cloud view and then dig into whichever environment that you want to look into setting up cost automation policies for, whether that's your AWS, Azure environment, or your on-premise Nutanix environment. We do plan to support GCP very soon, as well as other private clouds other than Nutanix. So it's really trying to bring in all of your frequently used cloud environments into one console and giving you complete visibility into all of your organization's spend. Additionally, we also help with automated cost anomaly detection so that you don't have to do any kind of setup or any kind of complicated cost analysis. Typically, what we see most of the organizations that do not use CSCM tools, they end up having to go manually through all of the billing reports, right? And as you can imagine, that's a really cumbersome process to have to go through very long billing reports, and then oftentimes from dozens to hundreds of cloud accounts, and oftentimes from multiple cloud providers to identify where your cloud spend might be increasing. So we've done all of that hard work, and we've used our own in-house generated machine learning algorithm that helps with automated cost anomaly detection. We had a question come in: how does Beam compare against Cloud Health? We are in the same space as Cloud Health. That was acquired by VMware recently. But in addition to the cost capabilities that Cloud Health has, we also have security compliance capabilities, similar to a tool called Redlock from Palo Alto Networks. So you're essentially getting both cost capabilities as well as security capabilities with Beam. And as we will go through the demo, you will see that we have a lot more support for spot instances and scheduling policies that Cloud Health does not have. And yes, we do support Azure as well. So we support AWS and Azure today, Nutanix on-premises environment, and GCP to come in the summer of next year. Right, so we talked about visibility. We help you bring all of your cloud spend together. We help you easily identify cost anomalies. And then the bread and butter of the tool is obviously around cost savings. And we do this in many different ways. First is policy-based automation to eliminate unused resources or to right-size underutilized resources. For example, you might have old snapshots that are sitting around in your public cloud environment, and you want to delete those snapshots. So you can just set up a policy once, such as if you see Beam identifies any snapshot that is older than, let's say, 90 days, then go ahead and automatically delete it. Or if there is any storage volume that is not connected to a compute instance for, let's say, 3 weeks or whatever, then go ahead and delete the storage volume, and so on. So that's deletion of unused resources. Then you can also have resources that are being used, but they're not appropriately sized. And we see that oftentimes with compute instances, where you might have spun up a very bulky instance, but that's not really optimal for what workloads are running on that instance for a long period of time. So we can either make recommendations about right-sizing those, and you can take the actions manually in terms of right-sizing, or you can configure the right-sizing policies in Beam and allow Beam to take those right-sizing actions on its own. Going beyond that, then we also provide reserved instance recommendations, where we analyze your historical usage and we normalize all of these instances that might be running for a 24/7 period over, let's say, a 30-day look-back period. And we normalize those to the minimum amount of reservation that you should purchase instead of consuming everything in an on-demand fashion. And lastly, it's around spot instances. So we'll also talk in depth about how we actually help you migrate your workloads from on-demand instances to spot instances. And so through all of these processes, elimination of unused resources, right-sizing of underutilized resources, RI purchase recommendations, spot instance migration, and also on-off scheduling. Together with all of these capabilities, we help deliver cost-saving opportunities. And lastly, in addition to the cost saving, it's also important to make sure that we have granular views for each user so that they can keep an eye on exactly what they are responsible for. Let's say I'm a DevOps engineer, but I do all of my deployments only in the US East region. I don't care about what happens in our Europe regions or in the APAC regions or anywhere else. I want to be able to have a segmented view, but the view should be across all clouds if I'm working with more than one cloud environment. And so over there, we help with the showback and chartback reports that are extremely granular. You can decide which user you want. You can decide which cloud region. You can even add tags to it. So if I have a production tag and I only want to see the cost views for all of my production VMs running in US East in my AWS and Azure environment, you can create those kind of granular views and send out automated reports, showback and chargeback reports, so that the users can keep their focus on exactly what they care about. And of course, then helping set up automated policies based on those individual views for individual users is also something that's in our very short-term roadmap. Bringing everything back together, so we talked about a lot of things. What are the key benefits? What are the key advantages? Beam is a SaaS solution. You can start your free trial from our website. It takes about 15 minutes to hook up with your public cloud. Takes maybe just like 5 minutes with your Nutanix on-prem environment. And you'll start to see cost-saving recommendations within the first 24 hours. Even during the trial phase, we've seen a lot of users are able to identify so many cost savings through resource deletion or right sizing that they didn't know about, that even during the trial phase, you could potentially save thousands of dollars of potential overspending. You can set up automated policies, so it's an action-oriented tool and not simply a reporting tool. It provides you complete multi-cloud coverage, so AWS, Azure, Nutanix supported today, GCP expected by middle of next summer, and also the non-Nutanix private cloud later in the next calendar year, so that we can bring in a lot of complete basically the whole tool set. And as I said, it takes only 15 minutes to set up, right? All we are doing is hooking up Beam to your billing reports, and just giving Beam the ability to run API calls in your cloud environment so that we can take any kind of automated actions. Even if you don't want to allow Beam to take any automated actions, you can still use Beam and for it is like reporting purposes and identifying what are the potential cost savings. Okay, so enough talking. Now let me quickly do a screen share and show you actually how some of these things work in practice. So what you're seeing over here is now our Beam console. We have configured it with a bunch of different AWS and Azure accounts. These are real data. This is not any kind of dummy data. This is real resources running in our own actual clouds. This is an overall spending view across my entire organization so that I can see how much have I spent in my current month, what is my projected spending, how efficient am I across all cloud environments. You see this number at 99% because these are our production accounts, so we try to keep them very heavily optimized from a cost perspective. And let's say if I want to dig in deeper into one of them. So we mentioned that we do automated spending anomaly detection, and that's what we are seeing over here. And this is really identifying out-of-pattern spending. For example, maybe you have never spun up a storage bucket at 3 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, or you've never consumed an RDS instance in a particular cloud region. This kind of helps as an early warning system by detecting those out-of-pattern spending so that we can actually show you down to the individual resource level what is it that that spending is happening upon. In this case, it may not be, I see some data transfer costs. That's probably not a cause for worry, but it's good to have from a kind of like an early warning detection perspective. If I go back to the actual account where we have more data. So this is our, as I mentioned, our cost optimization, the bread and butter of the tool, where we are identifying the cost saving opportunities in many different ways. You see, we support a lot of different services in terms of identifying unused resources that you are paying for and you're no longer using. So you can see the actual ID, resource ID tags, so that you can quickly, and of course the cloud account, so that you can quickly then go ahead and delete this resource. You can either take the actions from the Beam console, or you can do it in your cloud environment. From the Beam console, you can see very easily you can eliminate it, or you can set up an automation policy with Beam. Over here, for example, it says if snapshots are older than 40 days, then go ahead and delete it because that's what is being considered unused. And these are highly customizable, so you can choose your own policies however you want them to be. Unused resources, looking at things like network usage, CPU usage, IOPS, and so on. Here we see that the CPU utilization has been less than 10% for an extended period of time. It jumped a couple of days ago. So I can define what am I considering underutilized. And based on that, Beam is going to make a recommendation. For example, here, Beam is making a recommendation that instead of it being run as a double extra large size instance, you can downgrade it to a smaller size instance. Maybe we don't need to go all the way down to a nano size instance, but we could certainly bring this down at least 1 or 2 sizes. Reserved instance purchase recommendations, pretty simple and the same thing that you would see in other tools, which is normalizing your compute instances that have been running 24/7 over a period of time, telling you how much minimum amount of reservation you should purchase and what is the break-even period. So essentially, the question to me would become, should I purchase these this much amount of units, Beam is saying 110, if I am going to be using them for a period of 5 months, because that's where the break-even point seems to be. If so, I will recover. I'll start to save. I'll recover all my costs in 5 months, and then beyond that, it will be effectively savings instead of as compared with running everything on demand. We also make change recommendations. So instead of just new purchases, perhaps there might be some existing purchases that for RIs that you've made, right? And maybe your workload requirements change, your business requirements change, and those are no longer the most optimal RIs that you should be running. If those were convertible RIs, meaning that the cloud provider allows you to change them to a different size, then we'll show you the recommendations on changing those RIs based on either maximum amount of savings, which could involve a higher upfront payment, or minimum true-up cost, so that you don't have to pay too much more amount upfront in order to convert that RI, but the savings might be a little bit lesser. So those are the kind of change recommendations that we make for existing RIs. And we talked about spot instances, so this is what we are pretty excited about. These are some of the services that we support. The most common use case that we see is around auto-scaling groups. And essentially what we're doing over here, as we mentioned, is trying to predict the spot instances when they might be asked back by the cloud provider, and migrating your workloads automatically back to on-prem before the spot instance goes away. So and of course you can import your auto-scaling groups into Beam, your existing auto-scaling groups that you might have, or you can create new auto-scaling groups in Beam. And really all that you have to do in Beam is, in this case, it's an auto-scaling group. So you would define a target amount of spot instances that you want Beam to identify, a minimum amount and a maximum amount. So Beam is going to try and optimize to make sure that there are at least 5 spot instances available for this auto-scaling group, and trying to optimize towards 10 and never going above 50. You can have this either in the form of number of instances or the vCPUs across all of those instances. Between on-demand versus spot, maybe you don't want everything moved 100% to spot instances, and you want to keep a good balance of spot versus on-demand. You can define what should be the failback policy. Let's say if the spot does go away, then what should we do? Should we move the auto-scaling group back to on-demand instances, or should we move it to reserved instances in this case, right? You can define which regions we should look for the spot instances in, what type of the spot instances. For example, here we see M3.large. You can pick up your VPC that you want to provide. You can provide your OS environment. Here are the availability zones and the type of spot instances, so you can specify what type of spot instances we should find. You can specify the AMI, so we'll use the AMI, we'll clone the AMI when migrating to the spot instance before we drain out the on-demand instance. You can specify your security groups and your key pairs. The rest of the stuff is regarding your normal auto-scaling policy. So that's something that's probably already done in other cloud provider side. And once we find a spot instance, for example, over here, we can see that these are existing spot groups, as we call them, and we will migrate them from, we show you what happened in terms of, we found 2 instances, they ran for a certain period of time, and it delivered this much in cost savings for the period of time that these spot instances ran. If these ran normally as on-demand instances, you would have paid a certain amount, but because of this migration to spot instances that we did for this time period, your actual spending was far lesser, delivering sometimes up to 80 to 85% in cost savings. So that's a feature that I mentioned is in early access. So we'll be happy to onboard people one by one. And lastly, looking at what we call scopes. This is where we can define granular views let's say you care about a particular cost scope only for yourself, you can pick out the cloud provider, right? So we see AWS and Azure. We will have Nutanix in also here in about another couple of weeks or so. Define which parent accounts you want, which sub-accounts under that parent accounts you want, specify the key value pairs, and that's the definition of the scope. And as I mentioned, the scope can be across multiple cloud accounts. So let's say I could also add Azure over here. And what it does is it will create these cost scopes where I can then only focus on my view. I don't have to care about the overall company view, right? So I get to see the cost savings that are related to me. I see the budget views that are related to me. So you can define the budget either at a quarterly level or a monthly level, and then we will track your spending based on those tags that you define in the scope definition and alert you before the spending exceeds the budget. You can see based on the current spending pattern, we are showing that for this quarter, we will heavily exceed the allocated budget. So I could come in and take proactive actions and make sure that my budget does not get exceeded, and so that I can maintain good control over my cloud environment. So that's a very quick demo. And to wrap everything up, so Beam is a new service offered by Nutanix. We have nearly 150 customers by now, helping you get control over your cloud costs, right? And as I mentioned, there's a free trial. We also have some more reading material included with Beam in the resources that we provided with this webinar. And to recap, the way we deliver almost 50% in cost savings, mostly through spot instance migration and RI purchase recommendations, and also helping you right-size your cloud resources. So that's all that I have. I will look at the questions that came in. If there are any other questions, please feel free to bring them in. There's a question on the support for Ali Cloud. We have not mapped out Ali Cloud on our roadmap yet, but we are definitely hearing that a lot from the market. So we will take your feedback if Ali Cloud is important to you, and we will try to adjust our product roadmap accordingly. Right now, Ali Cloud was not budgeted, was not planned for in calendar year 2020, but if we keep hearing more from the market, then we will certainly reevaluate our roadmap for it. I will hang around for a few more minutes to see if there are any questions that come in, but that's all that I have today. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to helping you find some cost savings in your cloud environment with Beam.
All right, great presentation. Thank you, Sahil. A really cool live demo there of Nutanix Beam. Thank you for showing that to us. Again, love the user interface on that. Looks very easy to use. Would be a great product to help us control our cloud spending. I've just brought up a poll question from for you out there in the audience that says, what additional information would you like about the Nutanix solution? So I'll just leave it up there while we announce our final prize winners on the event today. So we have a final Amazon $500 gift card that's going out to Anna Cruz from Texas. Congratulations, Anna Cruz from Texas. And then grand prize number 6 for another Oculus Rift. That's going to Paul Willett from Colorado. Paul Willett from Colorado. And then our final grand prize for another Oculus Rift, that's going to Todd Hutchins from California. Congratulations, Todd Hutchins from California. I'll go ahead and post all of the prize winners from today in the questions box. And before you go, I want to remind you to make sure you answer the poll question on the screen. Of course, we appreciate that. Appreciate that participation. I know Nutanix does as well. All right, I just posted all the prize winners there in the chat for everyone if you want to check those out. Now, I want to make sure before you go that you are aware of the 10 on Tech podcast. It's a great podcast. It's over in the iTunes store, and that's where Actual Tech Media interviews some of the most innovative people in enterprise technology. If you're interested in sponsoring a potential Megacast or EcoCast event coming up this year or anytime, feel free to reach out to us. We are at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And finally, I hope you'll join us for an upcoming EcoCast. Our next EcoCast event is Exploring Innovations in Networking. It's there that you'll hear from expert presenters at Gigamon, Solarwinds, Flexential, Open Systems, and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. I hope that you learned a lot on today's event. I hope that this event has helped to make you more efficient as an IT professional and also can help your IT organization to do more with less. Thank you so much for joining us on the Megacast today. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.